I'm Nick Von Walkerbarth, and you're listening to the VonDubCast. If you don't want to listen to me gap in the intro and you want to skip right to the interview, skip about 7 minutes. Before you do, please consider doing one of these couple things that really helps out the show. Following the social medias for the VonDubCast, subscribing, and leaving a review. If you could do those things, that'd be awesome. Also, give me a subscription on the YouTube channel. That'd be great too. Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 94 of the VonDubCast. This is the first episode that I've released since the big reveal on Friday, letting you guys know that come October 1st, I'm going to be taking this thing full time and trying to bring in a couple other ventures that I've been kicking around and really excited about, but just haven't had the time to fully flesh out and bring to fruition and bring to realization. So I'm excited about that, scared as hell, but the amount of outpouring of support that came out on Friday, the calls I received, the texts, the messages, people telling me that I inspired them to start certain things in their lives and that they can't wait to see where it goes. And just the people that I really look up to and that I respect and that have done a lot in the world that have come to me and said, you know what, I've listened to some episodes and I really think you have a talent at this, and don't give up. I know it's scary, but this is what you're meant to do, and keep going, run with it and see where you can take it. And that just meant a lot to me. These are things that, like I always say, I have a ton of confidence in myself and my abilities to do this and to make this what I want it to be. And I'm also very lucky to just be in the situation and the age and, just everything that preceded this to be able to do this. And not a lot of people have what I have to be able to take a shot like this. And I feel like almost I owe it to the world, since I have all those things, just to do it for those people that can't do it and hopefully inspire them to be able to do it in the future when they can. So yeah, I just wanted to say another big thank you to everyone that listens and everyone that has been supporting me throughout this thing and that came out to really throw their weight behind me on Friday. Really meant a lot. I'll be asking you guys to do that once again come October 1st once we start getting the sponsored episodes and it really starts to matter whether people are listening or not. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to ask for another big round of help, a big round of sharing, and a round of just whatever comes in that form, whatever sponsorships come on board, just kind of jump into it. If any of them sound interesting to you, maybe check them out. That would really help bring this to a point of professionalism that I hope to reach. It'll just help me get there even sooner. So thank you guys for all your support so far, and I'm just gonna thank you in advance for all the support you're gonna give me when I ask you guys for it. So yeah, have a really great episode for you guys today. My buddy Cole, who's been helping me with the YouTube videos and a couple things on the back end these last couple months, helping the YouTube page get caught up. Another guy that I met in the Peterson Pals group, very interesting guy. He's from Edmonton, and he has a cool story and just a good outlook on his own story and how far he's come and how some of the pitfalls that he's seen himself fall into, how he wants to help prevent people from falling into those. And I think just with the hindsight of seeing what you go through, it's so hard when you're right in front of it, to kind of see the cause and effect of what's bring you to these places. It seems like so often you're so close to it, you just kind of wake up one day and you're in this whole situation that it's almost hard to see how you got there. But to look back on it like Cole has and really pull out the pieces of information that were helping him and the things that were hurting him, and to try and kind of separate some of those things out and just live a life that is serving him and serving his happiness is, I think, a very admirable goal. And I think it's also something that a lot of people can learn from. We got very in-depth in this conversation. Like I always say to you guys, it's tough to do these intros and outros because at this point I don't have anyone really helping me to really dictate exactly what was talked about in the conversation go past, and I hate re-listening to them, so I don't even know exactly what we said. But I know we got really in-depth about some topics, and we talked about some really heartfelt things about close relationships and stuff. And I think after the fact, we both kind of really like, whoa, we went really, really far down some rabbit holes and talked about some really personal things about addiction and the relationships and how that affects things. And so there was some things that we cut out. I'm not aware of which ones. Cole kind of just let me know which ones, or he sent me a file of the things that are cut out. So there might be some breaks. I don't sure how it's edited out. Not sure what things are in and out of the conversation we did, but I really liked the whole thing. And I could definitely understand some of the pieces that maybe we wanted to keep to ourselves a little bit. But I just want to let you guys know that, just in case you do notice anything and you, hey, why does this sound funny when this cut to here? I'm just going to tell you, I have no idea because I don't know what parts are cut or which parts aren't, but I just know that it was a great conversation, and whatever pieces of it you guys do and don't hear, I think that it was good start to finish, and I don't think it loses anything by taking any pieces out, and I don't think, and I still think it's going to be a lot to learn, or a lot to sift through and see what pieces you can take to learn for yourself, which is always my favorite podcast, where you can just kind of sift through them, listen to the stories, and just take whatever you will to put in your own tool bag of things that you're going to use going forward. So I really hope you guys enjoy this conversation. I had a really fun time recording it. I have some really fun ones. I did a recording with Tammy, our dog trainer, who helped us turn Ahsoka around and really helped us connect with her and learn how to chat. We had an awesome conversation this week. She came over and we did an in-person episode, and it is a great conversation. I'm really excited for you guys to hear that one. Have some really fun ones planned in the future. Episode 100 is coming up with my dad, Ingo. I know there's lots of people that are excited about that one. So just trying to figure out all the bells and whistles to make sure we give him the full experience that he wants. He told me he wants the full meal deal, video, audio, all that stuff. He wants to be treated like the celebrity he is. So I got to figure that out come episode 100. So lots of things exciting on the horizon, the streaming, the business consulting, guest ideas. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please leave a comment, leave a like. Those likes really matter on YouTube. If this is the first time listening, if you can go follow the social media for the VonDubCast on Instagram is the biggest one, the Facebook page, Twitter as well. All those things, it really helps grow the podcast and show potential guests that there are people listening. There's people that care about this and that it's something of value for them to give me their time. So if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. A little bit darker at times, a little grittier, but I think those are exciting episodes. Those are some of my favorites. So I hope you can commiserate a little bit with some of the darker times that me and Cole have had. And I hope that even if you can't connect with it, I hope it maybe will help shine a light on maybe some of those people in your life that you've had a hard time understanding their story and what they struggle with. Maybe it'll help give a little bit of insight into somebody in your life. And maybe it'll help you hold a little bit more compassion for what they're going through. And I think that's a really noble goal, and that everybody should be trying to strive for. The more compassion you can hold for a larger amount of people, and the less people you can put into a box where you're dehumanizing or thinking less of them, the better you are. So yeah, enjoy this episode, and I will see you guys in the outro. All right. It's been a long time coming, Cole. We've been doing a lot together on this podcast, but finally we're going to do it this way. Guest and host kind of thing, not behind the scenes. How's it feel?
I was pretty nervous going into it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This morning I was pretty nervous.
Yeah. And that's been an interesting thing to know at the start, I was so in it with the guest of the nervousness too. And I still do get nervous here, but I just have so much confidence now, 90 odd episodes in I know that it's going to be nerve-wracking at the start, but I've now, with almost every guest, got them out of that nervousness and into having fun. Quite some quicker than others, but just to know that I have that in my back pocket of, yeah, it's probably going to be scary for everybody to step into it, but to know that it's going to become fun at some point, whether that's 2 minutes in or 15 or 30, it just really gives me that confidence to go in. And even if the guest is nervous, to just say, just sit back and wait. We're going to be having such a weird conversation in about 5 minutes that you'll completely forget about nervousness because we'll be talking about, I don't know, giraffes or some dumb shit like that.
Yeah.
So we had met and yet another Peterson Pals group meetup there. And I just want to kind of start with how you found that group, because then we can kind of get into how we found each other and kind of what we've been up to these last couple of months. For some people might already know, but then we can start there and then go off from there.
Yeah, actually, oddly enough, it's kind of crazy because I don't really check Instagram, and I just happened to check it that day that Michaela posted that.
Really? Okay. So you probably hopped in there right around the same time.
Oh, sorry. What'd you say? I
was just going to say, so you probably hopped in right about the same time, because that's the post that I saw where I just checked it out on a whim too.
Yeah, so I think it was February 23rd.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Sorry, and you were in school?
Yeah, I was in school, and yeah, lots of, my teachers, some of them are very SJW, but I feel like because we're in Alberta, it's nowhere near as bad as when I was hearing the stories in the first couple introduction videos that went up. I was like, holy fuck, I didn't realize it was this bad. And it was all over the world too, right?
Yeah, that was interesting to see. So you were at Grat Mac for school then?
Yeah.
And what were you taking?
I'm taking communications.
Communications,
and,
right?
Minor in journalism.
Oh, cool. And and I would imagine that specific industry has a lot of that kind of SJW stuff. It's very left wing, just because that is one of those things where the power structures that exist in it, with journalism and all this stuff, is you kind of always have to go up through these channels, and they're always controlled. So they always have the same mindset throughout the whole thing, top to bottom, and you're brought up within it, so that if you ever buck the trend at the very basic level, you never end up getting to the top. So I feel like that's one of those ones where I would imagine, I can't say anything because I've never done it, but I would imagine there's a lot of that stuff within it. But like you say, hopefully Alberta balances that out. But I thought that at the U of A, taking business at the U of A, and it was the same thing. It was ridiculous, right? I couldn't even handle some of the classes. I mean, my major did have environment in the major, so I was taking a lot of environmental classes as well, which some were fine, but it's all about the teacher. That is the biggest thing that matters. It's much less about the content of what they're trying to teach, and just more so who is that teacher that's trying to teach it. And I feel like that's where the online classes right now is the biggest sham I've ever heard. I would not pay to go to school if it was online right now, because so much of what education is actually picking up wisdom from people. The syllabus and all that is just a medium for them to convey their wisdom of their age onto you. And if these people have nothing to teach in the first place, that's an issue. And then now you're taking that whole aspect away of the interpersonal stuff that you learn and all that. You're just taking their syllabus of what they think is right. Oh, I guess that leads me to my question. Is your school going back to in person this year, or what's it looking like?
It said in person and online. Like it seemed like you could have the choice. And then now it's hybrid. So I have no idea how that's going to work. And it kind of worries me. Yeah. Like, I mean, I'd be fine with that when it's -50 out here.
Yeah, very fair.
I'm fine staying home on those days, but
but that's the thing. School already is fucking work from home. Like, that's what university was. I didn't go to fucking class in the last 2 years of my degree. Like, you can skip if you want. You can stay home if you want. You can do that learning. That was already there. But just to enforce it and to take away from the people that want to learn. Hey, off. Hey, lay down. Oh, yeah, this dog. She's just getting into everything. I have these soundproofing panels kind of all over, and she loves to chew on them. So she's just always sneaking her head in behind the chair and trying to tuck her little nose in, grab one and pull it out. I can just see her. Be good? Good, laying down. Sorry, that's going to be all day. That is going to be all day. This thing is just, what were we saying? Grandma, something or other?
Well, and it's pretty crazy because the first journalism course I took,
right,
they literally were just like, yeah, we don't care about the truth. We're concerned with getting there first. You can always change it as things go.
Ooh.
And so, like, I gotta say, no one in my program trusts the media based on the courses we're taking at the very least.
Yeah. You know? And I think it's something that is so obvious to me as an outsider just looking at the media that is how they operate, right? But it's interesting to see that they're not even pulling any wool over their own eyes. They must have rationalized that as okay so long ago that it's long since lost any impact that is actually antithetical to what journalism should be, right? Like it's about getting to the truth, and it's about uncovering it, and about holding yourself to the values of who you are, so that your name means something, so that your journalism means something. But everyone just is like, well, nobody's journalism means anything all on this grand stage. We're all just as fraudulent as the next guy, so it doesn't matter. And that's what breeds that. But it also opens up the door to independent journalists like Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi to come in and do like amazing journalism work that actually is the true sense of what journalism is. And people are hungry for it. Now they put it out for, $5 a month, and people just eat it up, and they're making money hand over fist. And you see these places like CNN and CBC and Fox News all just crumbling and falling at their feet because they're stuck in that old paradigm. It's absolutely fascinating to watch from the outside.
Well, and there's so much bias in the media too nowadays, right? Like it's hard to really find the news, especially with like the pandemic. It's like, how do you find any concrete information? I've been saying this whole time, I can't really have an opinion because there's no way to find the truth about anything right now.
Right. And I feel much the same way. And what I feel so thankful for is that leading up to the pandemic, right, for probably the 4 or 5 years before, I'd completely jumped ship from the regular media and tried to find trusted sources with podcasts and YouTube channels and stuff of people that at the very least they might have their opinions, but I will have such an in-depth knowledge of who they are and how they think that I can not trust that opinion, but trust that opinion plus all the caveats I know from their personality. So now it's not just, I'm getting it from this corporation that I know, has all this bent, and you're just getting part of this little personality, but they're also, have their producers over them in their ear, and you're getting all these different pieces where it's just this giant amalgamation that you can't sort through. And like, what if this is true? What if this is bullshit? It all sounds like canned robotic bullshit. But when you have somebody that you followed for, say, 3 years, listen to them every week, multiple hours a week in your ear, and you know how they operate, then you can see where they're taking in news, and you can, if you have a couple of those, you can really triangulate the truth and the wheat from the chaff doing that. And I feel so thankful that I did that, because I feel like if you realized your mistake too late, that you were beholden to these entities that weren't being truthful for you once you got into the pandemic, and now you're scrambling to try and find these voices you trust with all this misinformation out there, you're almost fucked, right? Because things are so convoluted that even to try and find those trusted sources that aren't captured by any sort of entity structure, it's really hard to parse out which ones of those are good and which ones of those are doing the same things, right? It's an interesting problem, and I'm very thankful that I have what I have now.
Yeah, I pretty much just have Tim Pool.
Tim Pool.
Although he's becoming way more reactionary and Alex Jones-esque, but I mean, at least he still gives you all the articles he's looking at, so you can look into them yourself as well.
Exactly. Right? And that was the thing with Tim Pool. I used to love Tim. I still love Tim Pool. He's great. That was one of those ones where how I operate is I have those people like that, where I know what is coming out of your mouth is truthful to you and your like who you are, right? Like whatever Tim Pool says is very true to who Tim Pool is, and it's never going to be this is so hard to describe. It's never going to be untruthful to him. It might be untruthful to the state of facts. Like if you have different opinions or you sit in a different place, it might come off differently. You know what I'm saying? But what I like to do is, like, if it's so obvious to me that somebody is completely onto this one side, then I have to balance it out with other content on the other, right? And if I'm going to listen to a Tim Pool and I used to listen to him quite a bit back in the day, but leading up to maybe the election and a little bit after that, I kind of slowly drifted off, because if I'm going to listen to Tim Pool, who is really railing for the truth and really doing good journalism, I agree with you, like all those things are true, but it's so much through this lens of the right and all these things, and not even right, just anti-left more than anything. Is like, now I need to find another source that I trust this much to balance it out, that is so anti-right and anti this, but like, it's like, oh man, I hate doing that already. Like when I started subscribing to Matt Taibbi on that, who's a little bit of that, right? Like I'd say he's more center right on a lot of these things, and mostly just the wackiest shit on the left, and he calls out the right as much. I started subscribing to the Substack called Persuasion, which is kind of, they're like center left version of this, and they have all these, and about 50% of it is absolute horseshit garbage, but 50% of it's half decent, and they are showing it. It kind of pulls my opinion. But to try and find the left wing equivalent of Tim Pool and have to take in their content and not fucking kill myself, right? Like I just like, oh, okay, sorry, Tim, I love you, I know you're doing good work, I trust, like, and that's the thing. Once you listen to enough hours, though, you know that you trust that person, right? With somebody, all the media smears I see about Tim Pool, I don't believe it, right? Because I know what they try and do with a guy like him, and I know what he actually is at heart, and I know where he is. I know he comes from a good place, and he's a good person at the end of the day, and that's all I care about, right? That's why I listen to Joe Rogan. That's why I listen to Lex Friedman, because I know that nobody's ever going to be right. To expect 100% accuracy from everybody is ridiculous, but to know that it comes from a good place and they'll correct themselves if they are wrong goes so far for me that I will trust that leaps and bounds. I'm a very not trustworthy guy. I don't trust anything from anybody kind of thing. I'm very much on the other side of it, but that is going to give me so many more levels of trust. Maybe it brings you up from like a 2 to like a 4 or something. It's still not very high, but with those people, and then I try and surround myself, but those people that are so clearly a 0 on that trust scale, like the mainstream media, politicians, all that, I just completely take that out of. I don't even want to hear what you're saying, because your actions are going to tell me what you're doing. Your words mean nothing to me. Like, I don't mean to make this political right off the bat, but like throughout the whole pandemic of listening to Justin Trudeau speak, I've never heard one actual word come out of his mouth. Everything has been canned. Everything's been robotic. Everything's been focus grouped, where what is even the point of me wasting my time listening to you, especially a guy like me that listens to things on multiple speed? Because there's a certain thing about, it's a scientific, I might be conflating two different things in my head, but a long time ago, I heard this thing about speeding up language and how much you can hear falseness of like a fake laugh. If you listen to a fake laugh sped up, it sounds so weird, where if you listen to like a natural laugh sped up, it sounds very natural. Same with people are lying, same with people, and you can tell so much. So when you listen to like any politician, tell anybody to do this. Any politician, you want to hear that robotics speak, go listen to it on 2x speed and see how it comes off. Does it come off as genuine? How does it come off? And it's just like so purely false. It's like, why are we even listening to you? Why do you even have an opinion? Because clearly you're not even trying. We're not even connecting. We haven't heard from you in what, 6 years? Like we haven't heard a real world come out of your mouth. Like you've never done a podcast. You've never been genuine, never been vulnerable. You've never admitted fault. You never, because they're all stuck in this game of playing like we're perfect. You can't admit anything. To admit anything is to give the other team a point. It's just, it's nonsense to me, which I'm curious for you to see all that. If you see all that, if you agree, does that worry you going into journalism of kind of what the field is and where it's going? Like knowing that you're hoping to jump into it?
Well, I'm mostly trying to do like professional communication and like media. Like I actually was looking at doing film school at Nate, but when I phoned, they were like, yeah, it's a 2-year wait. And I was like, I was already 28 and I was like, I don't have 2 years to kick around, you know?
I hear you.
So
if something changed in the future, like maybe once you have this degree and you're working it, do you think that would still be something you'd keep in the back pocket as a dream? Like just say, you know, somebody at Nate heard this podcast and just, you know, thought you were cool and gave you that shot at, is that still something you think you would want to pursue in the future? Something like that, like the film side of it?
Yeah, thankfully, like this degree, like the communication degree actually has a lot of media production.
Oh, nice.
Which like, that's why I chose it. Cause I was like, I mean, it's a balance. And I also was I saw the journalism minor at the time and I was like, stupidly, I was like, being a video game journalist wouldn't be too bad, just playing video games all the time. But like, they're also like a bunch of shills too, right? So it's like
they can be, but that's what I see of, you know, if the industry is a bunch of shills, right? Like it is, and for a good reason, like to even have compassion for those people this is why I have compassion for all these people. Like even to take it back to Tim Pool, it's so tempting to find a niche. And everybody tells you, if you want to be successful, you have to find a niche, right? When I started this podcast, everyone, well, what's going to be your thing? You can't just do all those random things. You'll never take off, right? Because you need to find kind of an ecosystem and really work within it. And, you know, for Tim Pool, he found that, you know, he found where his money was and he leaned into that. He didn't lose that core tenet of trying to find truth and find it, but he found it through this one lens and really found the truth that fit one demographic, right? But I think what that does is it opens it up, right? And then the same thing happens with video game guys, because if you want to be a video game journalist, you need access to these production companies, these video game, the designers, right? The IGNs of the world, the Sledgehammers, all these people. So you need to kind of play that game and be a bit of a brown noser and exactly what you see out of those journalists that are kind of shills for the industry, right? But what I see is at every point, that's just creating a market, because what people want, they don't want these fucking same thing, right? Like the IGN stuff, it's so brutal. It's so commercial. It's so the mainstream media version of what you want in your video games, right? I'm very much the same way. But what that just tells me is that there's a real big opening in the market for somebody to come in and do it differently. Like just do it a bit more, rebel media kind of style, like the internet version of what that should have been, right? Like it's like video games are on this cusp of being in the internet age and before the internet age a little bit. And the media is almost still stuck in that old school, like print phase. And it's like, no, there's somebody that's going to come in, kick the doors down. And it's happening right now on YouTube. I mean, I get half of my like journalism information on video games from like streamers and from, video game personalities and shit. Right. And that's where it's going to go. And I think there's a huge niche for somebody to come in and do that journalism on a topic like that, but in a new way. That brings in the younger crowd, right? It has no restrictions in it. And it comes off, because if you do it that way, it's going to come off as genuine. The only thing that turns people off of those kind of shill type guys is the disingenuity of it. You can feel it. You can taste it, right? The human being is amazing at picking that stuff up. But every time I see that, I just look at the other side of it. Oh man, that's just creating a huge gap in the market for somebody to come in and fill. So that's exciting to me to hear if that's something you want to get to. I'm sure you could do that in your own way with your own personal spin on it. That would really, as long as it's true to yourself, people will pick up on that, right?
Yeah, true.
Interesting.
I actually because 2 years ago they were like, hey, because like literally I have to take journalism as my minor. I do not have an option to take like philosophy or something. That's just how this program works. But they were like, oh, we're going to add a design minor or a filmography minor. Ooh. And I was like, oh, cool. And then they were like, in 2 or 3 years. Like,
that's so convenient, eh?
Why'd you even say it? So I've been holding off on taking the journalism courses, but I realized I only have to take like 3 of them. And like a lot of, I don't know if you've seen any of the journalists in the group, but they do some really cool stuff. And I was like, wow, like, even though I think journalism is really failing, I could use that aspect of this degree to do something better.
For sure.
And
Exactly.
it was something I'd never really considered, you know, at all. And maybe it's because I felt the beast was too big to fight, you know, because journalism has fallen so far.
It really has. It really has. And that's so sad too, because it's such a sense making mechanism for society is your journalists, right? Like there's such, it's so funny to see what, and this is going to come off as funny because I'm such a, you know, I'm very pro capitalism and I love what it's given us. And I think people that don't think that way are needing to read a history book for every other thing we've tried over the world. Yeah, it has its issues, but it's funny to see what capitalism does to certain industries, right? Because capitalism is just trying to fit certain parameters, right? But it also misses a lot of externalities, right? And that's what you learn in econ. Like when I went into business, that was one of the first things I learned is just all the externalities that you miss with the system of how it's created. And I think things like education, like teachers, policemen, journalists, these are things that a capitalistic society won't hold to a high enough echelon for them to serve the communities that they, that was my elbow, for them to serve the communities that they need. And you need some sort of hybrid capitalism that sees the failings of the market and proselyte, which is so antithetical to capitalism. I know everyone's probably pulling their hair out when I'm saying that, but I just think like we need to find some way to just, and I think this is a culture. I think it's society. I think you have to change the society where you hold these people up on a, you know, oh man, you're a teacher. That means a lot. But I think that comes with the schooling, right? And, oh, you're a journalist. Wow. Right now, the public perception of where it's gone to because of where the market's pulled it. It's not that, you know, like we don't have this high esteem for our policemen and our teachers and our journalists and these people that, you know, our nurses, our doctors. We a little bit them, and just lately we have kind of brought them to the place, but they always should have been there. That never should have been something we needed to enact. But I feel like that's my big sticking point is we need to find those areas and we need to be able to have these conversations, right? But the entities that really benefit from how the system is now don't want it to change, and they don't want people to start reasoning like that. They want it to be, you know, capitalism versus communism, right? They want it to be dipolar so that they can keep people fighting, because to say, no, we got it really good, we just need to make a couple changes that, you know, takes power away from these giant corporations and from the government and kind of puts it in the people's hands, and we elevate these and it's going to make our community better. They don't want that. That's straight cash out of their pockets, right? That's straight them of the, you know, the will of the people coming through, which they've had securely wrapped up for, I don't know, 50 years, since the 70s, probably. Like it's wild. It's wild to me. I just find the whole thing so interesting. And that's why I'm so excited to get more into like the podcast stuff, because that rabbit hole is so deep of how interconnected that whole game is. And just to start educating people on how that all works in the real world, and to see past it, and to start seeing things, see the game within the game, and to start being able to apply themselves that way, right? Like if you're in journalism school and you think, oh, well, my only way forward is to, you know, just fall in line, follow these rules that are set in front of me, start here, work here for a couple of years as an intern, work here, right? And just kind of pick it up along the way. But to hear people, no, you can do it your own way. You can start your own YouTube channel. You can do journalism on your own. You can do whatever on your own. The internet is an amazing thing. You can make money. And that's kind of what I'm excited about. The next step of where people start to taking it once people see that they can grab the reins and do whatever they want. They don't have to fall into these, you know, stratifications that somebody made a long time ago, and we're all just expected to fall into them, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I really hope that like some kind of website becomes as popular as YouTube that isn't going to restrict people as much, because especially when I opened on yours and it said there was a strike on that one video, I was like, oh fuck, dude. Like,
yeah. and that's and that's to me. Yeah. And I felt the same way. And I do quite agree. And I think that is one of the biggest things holding it back. But that's the same issue is I see that exact same issue of what capitalism does is it brings it to a point where they block off anybody from competing with them, right? So that they are at that point, but they don't want anybody to compete, right? YouTube doesn't want anybody to compete with them. They want to keep the stranglehold on it. The governments don't want anybody to compete because it's so much easier to be able to control things if there's one tap, you know, like if the whole water for the village comes from this one, if you want to get your message out, everybody has to go to YouTube. They can keep that. They don't want that. But as much as that hurt to see that copyright strike, or not copyright strike, that I don't know, community strike. Yeah, because I'm an awful human that's spreading disinformation with all these awful things I say, and my message of love and compassion for everybody. But that's the thing. As much as that hurts, it also to me is, like it's just a death knell of, if you're going to censor somebody like me who has so so much tried to lead everything with love. The entire 90, you go back 90 episodes, you listen to those. My message, every single one is you got to love everybody. You have to have compassion. You got to have open conversations, be willing to change. Like there's nothing bad or against the community in any of those things. And the fact that they're going to come after guys like me, that is going to be the nails in their coffin of like, you know, they went for the easy ones, the Alex Joneses, all those, and that is criminal to me. The fact that you can, cut somebody's free speech out from under them when it's such a community right. Like the right to have a YouTube channel should be protected just like everything else, right? Because people have a right to show to have their opinions made. And I know it's a private company, but that's again where capitalism fails and we need to find something better, right? There's a slip in the gears there, where we need to figure something out. But now they're starting to go too far and they're starting to go after, like they've tried to go after the Joe Rogans of the world for how long, right? And just a public outcry. And they try and go after these certain people that then get access to the Joe Rogans, right? Joe Rogan every couple months will have somebody on that was completely canceled for something totally unreasonable. And that's just another chop at the legs of YouTube and the legs of these structures that are seeing, because people are starting to open up to, man, they really are not handling this well. This thing that everybody needs and is a real public good, they are not handling it well. And it's I don't know. So when I saw that copyright strike, it was yes, a kick in the gut, but also oh, you fucking idiots. Like, look what you're doing. Like eventually this is going to catch up to you. You're doing the wrong thing. So I feel like that's also what just keep me going, keep me excited about it. That if ever they got to that point where they tried to really say that I was dangerous and that I couldn't be, you know, I'd find something else and I would fight so much harder to make sure and get that reversed and to show the error of their ways and what they're after. Like, I don't know. I know they're playing a game, but I feel like people need to play it too, and people need to go back against it, and people need to find that middle ground where the balance lies, and we just haven't found it yet because we're all so handcuffed with what we can do as just one person compared to these giant entities with all these things behind them. But I don't know. We've seen over history that can change in a hurry. That can change in a hurry.
Well, and I have a theory about, like, you know, because there are people like PewDiePie and JP and Joe Rogan that kind of have like a message. Well, I mean PewDiePie more recently, but he does like workout videos, philosophy videos now. He did a whole video where he was like, I heard that literacy was down, so he did, these are all my favorite books. He was like, I want to get you guys reading. He's doing book clubs with philosophy and stuff like that. And JP wants people to do better, and so is Joe Rogan. He was I remember when all this started, he was encouraging people to be healthy, working out. You know, he was like, sure, we don't have a treatment right now, right? But we know that if we're healthy and if we actually give a shit about ourselves, but the media attacks those people always. And I feel like it's because, like, a lot of them don't want people to realize that they can find happiness in themselves and find joy making themselves better. They want them to want to buy products or to subscribe to their ideas,
and to be scared.
Because
that's the biggest thing. If you want someone to buy a product, if you can get them into a state of fear, you can pretty much get them to do whatever you want, right? And that goes beyond selling products and into what they'll put up with, what freedoms they'll give up. If you have people in a state of fear, in a state of confusion, you can make them do almost anything. And it's very clear. And you can see the tactics happening right now with some of the things they're trying to put through and how they're trying to frame them to make it seem as if, you know, this is a life and death thing. And it is in a sense, but not in the way that they're framing it so that they can make these moves that, in a normal time, if you would have said some of these things 2 years ago, people would absolutely fucking riot. The whole world would look like Australia. You know what I mean? Like, but it's just happened that they did it so, I don't know, but slowly. It was still way faster than I ever thought possible for people not to push back. But I think I also didn't know it was possible for them to whip up such a fear frenzy over death like they did, which was so amazing. I'm just like running tickers of mortality counts 24/7 on mass media. You don't think that has some sort of effect in what they want to push through, and why this split of rationality where people like people in the Peterson Pals group say all the time, is this actually happening? How is the world this blinded to? To me, that's very obvious that that's exactly why. And I, again, try and hold compassion for those people, because if I was that and I was every day on CNN watching these death counts and was so scared and just getting fed this fear, I might think the same thing. You know what? Hey, we need vaccine passport. Hey, if you know what, you do, these aren't computer chips, and maybe we do need to put ankle monitors on people that aren't vaccinated just to keep control of them, because, you know, like, that is wild to me. And clearly I'm being way over the line to try and show the ridiculousness of it. But I try to hold compassion for that person of, but look how they got there. Look at what they were fed, right? Like, the human being, you know, like it's almost the free will argument at a certain level, like the Sam Harris stuff of like, this isn't anybody's fault. They're all just taking it, processing and having outputs based on how they were raised and all this stuff, you know, like, I don't know. Maybe I'll try and dive in there. You've mentioned philosophy a couple times, so I'm imagining that you've come across Sam Harris and maybe even his debates with Jordan Peterson on the free will thing.
I actually haven't seen the debates, but
I recommend those highly.
To the audiobook Waking Up.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it was. Yeah, that was like, because I wanted to learn how to meditate. And he has like on the audiobook, he literally just breaks it down. He has like a whole like section where he kind of does like a walkthrough meditation with you. So that really was interesting.
Yeah. And how did you like the meditation? Because he also has an app that goes with the Waking Up app. I've never tried it myself, but I've heard really good things about it.
Yeah, I was going to, but at the time I was really broke, and it was like, I think $50 or something for me to use it. And I was like, I might try that now. Or no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think also Sam Harris has things with his podcast and with like the app too, that if you don't have money, if you just send him an email, he'll give you a free link to it because he wants everybody to have access to it. I'm not sure. I know that's for the podcast itself because he'll release like half of them for free. But if you pay to be a subscriber, you get the full episodes. But he always says, if you can't afford it, just email me. We'll give you a free, no questions asked. I don't care. I just want people to have access to it. But if you do have the money, I'd want to support myself, which I think is an amazing model that I'm definitely stealing pieces of for, you know, future plans that I have doing stuff like that, because, you know, I just think that is truly what the market needs of your that is the mix. That's that mix of capitalism and something else. I don't know what that I was talking about earlier. Like that's the examples that you see, right? I think other examples like Elon Musk of, you know, playing the game of capitalism, but with other goals in mind of bringing the world to a better place. Like I just see examples like that where we've never really had people to look at that we can learn from that can play both sides of it. It's interesting. But then the meditation that you learn, I'm just curious because I'm such a meditation addict. I just, you know, could talk about it for hours and just the benefits of it. From that audiobook that you read, did you try the meditation? Did it help you? Did you like it? Did you not like it? I'm curious.
I haven't, like, I have ADD. Like, I mean, it's such a, like,
everybody does a little bit.
Things where, like, you know, but the thing is, when you're a kid and you've been taking like effectively meth for your entire life, it really does get you to the point where your brain doesn't work properly.
Yeah,
you're
100%, 100%, 100%,
really bad. But yeah, it makes it hard for me. Even when I smoke weed, it makes it hard for me to like meditate. But I found this guided meditation that's called like Let Go for anxiety, and like, man, anytime I have like severe anxiety, I can't like function because of. Listen to that, even though I've listened to it a million times. It's only 20 minutes long. Yeah, I feel amazing. Like, and even the comments, there's like 8 million views on it. All the comments are like people there like, thank you, this saved me. I listen to this whenever I have a problem. And I didn't realize meditation could be so powerful. Right. So like wipe it all away, you know? And unfortunately, sometimes I'm so in my head, I forget to do the meditation. That's
just human nature right there. But it's so nice to have a tool like that in your toolbox of like, there's so many people out there in the world right now that would, if they could get past the point of it's almost a leap of faith to give it, because if you go into it so sure it's going to fail, right? And so sure that your anxiety is too much, this meditation stuff isn't going to help. If you go into that with that mindset, it's not really going to work, right? You need to at least give it enough chance to try the meditation to feel it. But if you can do that, the tool that it ends up being, like, to have that in your back pocket of, if it gets to this point, I know I can just take 20 minutes and reset, which is very similar to what meditation gave me, and just my own private meditations of kind of figuring out how it works. To know that I have that in my back pocket is so nice. And it almost is anti-anxiety, just knowing that you have it, even if you don't need to use it, just to know, because it's a very different feeling to walk through the world of knowing that anxiety could take me down at any point. I could have a panic attack and I could be in a real world of hurt and have no real actionable solutions to fix it. But then once you have something, it might not be perfect. It might not work in every sense. It might not work as good as you just described it, but to have something is a complete game changer for these people that walk through the world and are really struggling with something like that. Just to know that, you know, I have some sort of solution that I can bring up, just changes the whole framework of it. Hey, it's interesting.
Well, and even like Stoicism, I recently got into, also because of PewDiePie, and like I read Meditations from Marcus Aurelius. Like, I think he has something where he's like, if you just start having thoughts you don't want, just think these thoughts are unnecessary until they go away. you know, just be like, because like it just reaffirms in your brain, hey, you don't need to be thinking about this anymore, you know, and that
You're
also
training
works.
yourself. Yeah,
Exactly. But when you forget about it and then the thoughts start going out of control, it doesn't really help a lot. Once you get to the point, everything just goes nuts, right?
Which is why it's so good to have multiple tools, right? I can use this right now. I can use stoicism. I can use meditation, and to have all these things, because not everything is going to work. Not everything is a cure-all. And for some reason in society, we want everything to be a cure-all these days. We want everything to just fix all the problems instantly with one pill. But that's not usually how life works. You need to have a well-rounded, of diverse tool bag to go into to keep yourself there. And people always talk about, you know, working on their mental health and all this stuff and trying to heal. And it's like, that is a never ending process. You're always doing that. You're always adding more tools. You're always getting knocked down. Life is tough. It's always going to kick you in the dick, but you're always just, how do you build back up? How do you get back on that horse? What tools do you have at your disposal to make yourself better and to get through it? Because if you just go through life hoping that what you've done so far is going to keep helping you, life's going to keep getting harder. It's going to keep getting more complex. You're going to have more to deal with. You're going to have more responsibility, more on you, right? Like, I just think it's such a noble thing to talk about and to actively work on yourself like that, and to make sure that you're and it's good not just for yourself, for the people around you. It's almost something that you owe to other people to do that work, so that you aren't taking your shit out on other people, right? Philosophy's come up a couple times. Something I really enjoy, mostly as of late. I don't think I was too into philosophy maybe until 5 or 6 years ago, but after that, it's just been this endless source of entertainment and learning, to just dive into all these ancient minds that had such a great grasp on the world, and to see how different the world is now, even to 50 years ago, right? Just the speed of change that we're dealing with, and how everything feels so different. But then to read somebody from hundreds and hundreds of years ago and say, oh no, human beings aren't that different. We are very much the exact same as we were hundreds of years ago. We just have all this new inputs and all these new things. And it gives you such a way to look at the world and such a better understanding, because I think everybody wants to think that we're different, but I feel like that's where so much of the suffering comes from, because they don't realize that, oh no, we haven't changed much. Evolution doesn't work on that. 20 years to society is fuck all to evolution, right? Like they 20 million years, 20 billion years kind of thing. So I'm just kind of curious for yourself, is where did your I don't know if I can call it a love of philosophy, you tell me that, but whatever philosophy is to you, where did that start, and kind of who was your first inputs to them, and who are you listening to now? Where do you go to? What are your favorite philosophers kind of thing?
Well, like I was saying, PewDiePie actually got me. Like he did a video on Marcus Aurelius, and then he did one on Diogenes. And then he actually did an hour-long video on The Republic by Plato.
Really? Wow. I didn't know PewDiePie was that philosophical. To be fair with you, I haven't watched too much of PewDiePie. I just know of him, but I never really got into that much. But that's right up my alley of kind of combining that, and just to know of what a communicator he is and all the skills that he has, that he's built up over a decade of what he's been doing, right? To be able to take that skill set that he has and apply it to something that I love, like philosophy. That sounds like right up my alley. Like probably right after this recording, I'm going to go watch those, right? Because that's something I'd be into. And that's awesome to just think of how many thousands of kids would have had nothing to do with philosophy, would have had that off in this box of, philosophy's weird. It's nerdy. It's whatever word you want to say. I don't want to say the word that it would be called in my hometown of what like they think of it. Right. But that's always that thing. But that's just thousands of kids that now have their mind blown apart by these huge thinkers. And that's what we need. That's what school should be doing. That's what blows my mind, is this is what school should be doing, is introducing you to people like Marcus Aurelius or Plato or any of these people that just have these amazing things to say, and yet it isn't. So you went through with PewDiePie, and then when did the journey? When did the mantle kind of fall to you? Did you start looking into it more after that? Was that also before Jordan Peterson, or was that kind of after? Because to me, Jordan Peterson is one of my favorite philosophers. It's always funny to look at philosophers that are still living, because it's almost something. To call yourself a philosopher is almost a funny thing. It's almost something that people should call you once you're gone, right? Like, and to have somebody still living, it's funny to look at that, but it's so clear from his body of work that he is a philosopher, and that is at the core of what he's doing. And that's it's awkward to say, but at the end of the day, that's something that I want to do. Like, that's at the core of it, of being a podcaster, right? You want to philosophize, you want to think about this with other bright minds and just really understand your take on the world. And that's something that it's kind of awkward to say, because who wants to talk, it just feels weird to say you want to be a philosopher, but it's one of the highest orders of compliment I could pay to someone is to call them that. Right. So sorry, I think I had a question there and then I kept going. Sorry. So,
well, actually it's really interesting because PewDiePie's philosophy, and he talked about like Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if you've read that book.
I have never read that.
No. It's by Viktor Frankl. Have you heard of it before?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was, but PewDiePie has had drinking problems, and I, at the time, had really bad drinking problems. And so him like showing that book, and then he was talking about how these Jewish people were in these camps, and the ones that you could tell had lost all hope were the ones that were drinking and smoking, and the ones that weren't were the ones that survived and made it through the problem,
Right.
And so for him, it was kind of like, if I'm drinking all the time, I've given up, on my life in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
And so that really
you're
helps.
escaping instead of dealing. You're escaping instead of trying to get out of that place that makes you want to drink. You're giving into it, and you're just going to escape it, right? Which is adding into it and maybe even pulling you farther from the place you need to get away from that.
Yeah, and I was drinking like, have you heard of the show MASH?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know how they're always drinking like gin, like always drinking dry martinis.
Yeah.
So my dad and I would watch that together, and we would drink maybe 2 liters of gin every 3 days.
Yeah.
It was absolutely insane. And like I was hungover every day, and like that also was bad for my dad as well, right?
For
like,
sure.
It's just like,
yeah.
And we didn't really think much of it. And like those hangovers, like you wonder why you're depressed, and it's like days and days and days and days of hangovers, right? So once I had taken a week off of that, it was like, holy shit, what have I been doing to myself?
Yeah.
For years and years and years. How have I been doing this to myself? I'm like hungover in August. I work a manual labor job, and I'm like, it's 33 degrees out, and I'm hungover as shit working, and I wonder why I hate life. It's like,
yeah,
of course, but JP, I had a drug problem before I hit JP, and hilariously enough, like we had already talked about Dark Souls and Bloodborne and whatever else before, but that like I literally didn't understand what effort was until I played Bloodborne. As weird as that sounds, like I would get report cards and it would say your effort isn't there, and I did not comprehend what the fuck that meant.
Yeah.
And then I would play these games and they seemed so hopeless, but I was like, clearly other people have beaten them.
Yeah.
Clearly other people have beaten them. So if I put the work in, I can do it too. And so once I started like going through it, it was like, oh, even if the progress is very small, very, very small, you're still moving forward.
Yeah.
No matter what. Right.
And maybe just so people can understand the point that you're making there, do you want to just maybe explain to people what Bloodborne is? Me too, because I've never actually played it. I know what you're talking about.
Well, Bloodborne is made by the people who did Dark Souls, and it's just like a horribly oppressive like video game. But there's so much hope in it because it wants you to do well. Like the game is fair. If you die, it's your fault. Yeah. It's difficult. It's tough but fair, just like life is, right?
Exactly. And that's what draws so many people into it. And it's one of those games where, I'm such a, I don't know. So that's something in there I've never dove into. I'm sure I will play those games at one point just to see what they're all about and just to try that, struggling to see if I like it. I'm not sure if I'll like it or I'll hate it. And I think I don't want to, I feel like I want to hope that I'm the type of guy that would love the Dark Souls types game and would really dive into it. But I have this fear that I'll be the kid that this is too hard. I'm going to pout and I'm going to quit. And I don't want to find out which one of those people I am. So I've been avoiding it, but I know I need to lean into the things I'm avoiding. So in finding a game like that is so dreadfully hard and so frustrating. And so you have to do so much just to figure out, to get a little bit better, to get past this next point. And then it opens up all this other stuff and it's still just as hard and you're going to run into those same walls, but it's about that it's effort, right? It's which is so fascinating to me to hear of there's probably so many people out there. Cause I learned effort from a very young age. My family, it was never, we were very well off, but because of that, it was always, my parents never wanted us to fall into the traps of that. So it was always about, putting in hard work and always working and doing the right thing. And it was very structured that way. So I always had it, but that's interesting to me of having to find that elsewhere. Man, that's that. So what was that? What was that experience like of recognizing what that effort was and going through that change? Because that must have been a big change in life, because that expands so much past, video games and all that, like a thing like learning what effort is and how that has affected your life of not having that up until that point. How did you deal with that? Like, how was your,
Well, and I was 25.
yeah, exactly. Right.
Like that's how long I went through life. Just
Yeah.
like doing drugs, no effort, zero fucks given.
Wow.
I've been like literally I've never moved out of my parents' house. And the only reason I'm still here is because I'm in school now. Like,
Right.
and they said I could stay while I'm in university
Right.
to save me a fuckload of money. Right.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I mean, we had like an agreement about that, but like for like no effort, man, none at all.
Yeah.
And I was like the drugs, a friend of mine was selling. So I was addicted to ketamine. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I know lots of people that do it recreationally and yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, I was getting like what people would normally spend $250 on for $20 from him.
Wow, and that's just
so I was doing so much. And like I was at work, dude. I would be like in the bathroom stall, busting out a line, talking to my manager and shit. Like
wow.
It was so bad. And I'm pretty sure everyone knew, but the thing is, companies, if they address it, then they have to pay for you to go to rehab.
Yeah.
So that's why probably it never came up for that reason. And I'd never like had an accident or anything, and ketamine, you can't tell when someone's high. Your pupils don't dilate, nothing like that, you know.
Wow.
So
wow,
it was absolutely crazy.
So then I'm curious, just trying to put timelines together of kind of, just to put everything on the table and then we can sort it out and put it in order of where it comes to, right? There's the PewDiePie videos with the Marcus Aurelius, that kind of stuff. There's JP, there's drugs, there's alcohol. Where did was it alcohol into drugs and then which one did you find first that helped turn it around? Was it kind of alcohol and then you found JP and that kind of helped you out of that? And then there's drugs and then you found Marcus Aurelius. Like, I'm just kind of curious to put the whole timeline together in my head just to see how it went for you.
So, I was actually thinking about this earlier today because there are lots of like younger people in the group and I don't want them to make the same mistakes I did. Right. It's very important to me. And I was realizing, it started when I was like 16 and I would go to house parties and I was nervous about people liking me. And so I would do things like literally chug 2 6s in front, like a whole fucking bottle of rum.
Yeah.
And people would be like, it's fucking water to them. And I just like, that became like my identity that I could drink all this booze, And I would always end up blackout drunk and making a fool of myself.
I know so many people that exact story applies to, Cole. It's almost like, it almost makes me want to cry. Like as you told that story, I pictured probably like 6 of like people that are really close to me that I know that exact thing. And I've told other people that's exactly what happened, even though they don't understand it themselves. If you could tell that it's so much of it comes back to social anxiety, right? Which is such a natural thing. Like, we're not designed to be around this many people. And that's a pretty normal fear, but nobody talks about it. And this is taboo, so that people find their own at 16 years old where, you don't want to ask for help. You don't want to admit that you feel anything. So you just find these things. And if it works, right? And I know so many people like that. People that are from Slave Lake and around my age probably know the 2 6 a rum guy, right?
Yeah.
And multiple of them, right? And it's almost comical to think of that, but it's also heartbreaking to think of what that does and just what an easier tool. Like, if somebody in that moment at 16 could have handed you meditation or stoicism, or I could name you 50 different things that could have been handed to you other than what you stumbled upon yourself, right? And that's what gets me of how can we start educating people of that there's better things out there so that they're not so wide open to these pitfalls, right? Like, if you don't educate people on all those other tools, the pitfall of, making your identity the drugs and alcohol thing becomes so big that it's almost impossible not to fall into it, right? You're going to go to that party and you're going to find that it works once and you're going to go back to that well. That's how human nature is designed, right? Like, breaks my heart a little bit. Sad. Well,
and it was always the same house too. Like, this guy was my weed dealer and we always, all of us, the same 12 of us, hung out.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, it was just so bad. Looking back on it, it's like, and I ended up doing mushrooms for the first time when I was blackout drunk. Like, I can tell you the only thing I remember, and it was funny because they had caps that were like this big. I'm not even joking. And they were like, just do one, you're fine. Like, you'll be totally fine. And we were walking around his house and there was a tree. And I literally said, I don't feel anything. And then the like trees started just melting around me. And that was the only thing I remember from the night. And then I just like came out of the high while I was playing Guitar Hero.
Wow.
Like, literally just like halfway through a song, I was like the alcohol wore off. And I just remember I just woke up and I was like, oh shit, what the fuck happened?
Yeah. And so that sounded like that's kind of started at 16. And then at what point did usually the normal progression is that it escalates for a while, right, before it becomes an issue, because the younger you are, the less responsibilities. What, to me, the biggest thing of they always talk about with addiction, but I don't even like looking at it as a, I guess you can look at it through the lens of addiction, but when it becomes a problem, when it's not serving you, that's when it becomes addiction, right? Like they say, you could have the two same people that drink the exact same amount, and one can be an alcoholic, one cannot be, because of how they operate and who they are and what they are as a person and how it affects their life, right? Which is so hard to wrap your head around. I think for so many people, that's really tough to see. They want to keep it in this box of like, no, alcoholism is just a disease, or it's just this. It's very nuanced, and addiction is so far to either one of those sides. But I'm just curious, when did you start to recognize some of the issues of it, or that it wasn't serving you? Like, was that right at 16 where you recognize that? Because for me, some of these things, like just to put my own personal spin on it, like it took me years to recognize some of the negative habits that I had. And you just don't even, either it's fun, so that masks it, or you're just really compartmentalizing things in your head and rationalizing things. So you don't realize the negatives, but eventually it catches up to you. So when did that start to break through that maybe this wasn't such a best thing?
The big wake up call for me was, I think I was 28. It was like 2 or 3 months before COVID hit. And I was with a bunch of like 19, 20-year olds, and they were all drinking and doing like double shots. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I was nervous because like it was a new crowd of people, but they were all like SJWs, and they always talked about communism and shit. So I got like so loaded, lost my shit on them. Don't remember anything I said to them.
Sorry,
like,
that's not funny.
Not at all. And like, I was horrified. Yeah. Like with my own behavior, like exactly. I literally stopped talking to everyone. My program is very small, so everyone probably knows about it, and like I literally like was hiding at the school. I had so much anxiety that I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. And then I went to therapy because like a lot of people were texting me like, yo, bro, you're a fucking crazy person and you need to get therapy because of all the shit you were saying. So I was in therapy for like 3 or 4 months. I got to the point though where the therapist was like, yo, you seem fine. Yeah. He was like, we're just shooting the shit now. We don't really need to talk about anything else. But it really came down to me having a lot of self-worth problems.
It always does. That's at the core of every issue and every person. And I think that's at a core of humanity. I think that's part of human nature, is to have those, right? And you have to you can either find healthy ways that serve you or unhealthy ways that don't serve you to deal with that. But everybody's journey is the same at that level. We're all trying to love ourselves. And that's the biggest understanding that I've come to in the last little bit. And that's why I try so hard to have compassion for people, because even though you're doing something that, even if somebody's doing something that is so antithetical to what you believe in, is like the complete opposite, like it usually comes down to a place of insecurity and lack of loving themselves, right? Like all those people that are on the woke side, they're just looking for something because they don't have any substance to themselves, and they're so scared and they don't love themselves fully that this is an identity they can put on that fills that hole of self-love, right? Like it's patched with duct tape and fucking circular reasoning, but it's still full, right? Like it's something, and it's easy. I have to put very little work in. I can just, tell me the words to say. I don't have to think. I don't have to do anything. It's the laziest idea, like the laziest idealism of all time, right? And it really hurts a lot of people, but they don't recognize that because they're just trying to hide themselves from their own self-worth issues, because that's the scariest thing you can ask. Why do I not love myself? What parts of me do I not love? What parts of me do I have to come to terms with? That's the scariest thing anybody can do. So we'll do anything else to stay away from it. It's
yeah. It really helped my ego though, because she was like, we've never seen anyone go from where you were to where you are now in such a short period of time.
And that's sweet, awesome. And that's a thing. Like so many people, all they need is just somebody to talk to that gives them a space of safety to get some of these things off. And some people, it's a lifelong journey where you need to talk to somebody for forever. Some people it's a month, some people it's 3 months, some people it's, a couple of years, and also you need to find the right therapist, because also some of them will try and keep you on the hook, right? And they have their own self-worth issues that come back down on that. So you have to have compassion for them too. But it's just about recognizing that in yourself. So then the therapy, that sounds like it helped a lot. And I am a huge proponent of therapy. I think everybody that should at least investigate it, right? And it's a long, arduous journey to find the right person. You can get lucky and you can find the right person on the first go, but for the most part, it usually takes about 3 or 4 different therapists to find the one that works for you, which scares a lot of people off too. But I think it's better just be honest about that, right? And who knows, you might get lucky. The first one might be great and you might do awesome, but you might have to put a little bit of work in too. But the benefits of it are just off the charts. So therapy was before Jordan Peterson and Marcus Aurelius. Like, did that come after that?
No. Therapy was very recent.
Right.
So I found Bloodborne in 2015
Yeah.
and didn't really play it till 2016. And that was when that book came out, JP's book.
Right.
But what happened with drugs was my friend who was selling to me gave me something he didn't even know what it was.
Oh boy. That's never a good sign.
He didn't tell me. And so I did it, and literally I would move my head and it would take about a minute for my brain to catch up.
Wow.
And I couldn't think at all. And very clearly, at least, like it was really hard to put a thought together. And all I could, it was very scary. I was like, am I going to spend the rest of my life in an insane asylum? You know, and when it finally wore off, I was like, okay, no more of this.
Yeah. That was kind of a moment that shakes you, right?
So then I had a falling out with all my friends at the time too, like around that. So I was just completely alone. All I had was Bloodborne. And then I found JP's book. I don't even remember how, but I started listening to that when I was at work, and I was like, yo, and him saying, you not taking the opportunities that are afforded to you really resonated with me, because I was like, I'm living with my parents. I don't have to pay rent. I'm really in an opportunity here where I could go back to school. And then I had a friend that when I first went to university was a good friend of mine, and she was like, hey, Cole, you're really smart. You're kind of wasting your life not addressing that, you know. And that was kind of my final push to be like, okay, yeah, I'll go back to school and get my shit together.
Wow, that's awesome.
I'm getting A's now. Like, I would have never expected that, you know. Like,
it's so funny what paradigms do to people, and just these understandings of who we think we are, right? And these stories that we tell ourselves of either it's like, I'm not smart, I don't get A's, like I'm not that student. But that's just a story you're telling yourself. Or I'm shy. That can be one too, where if you get told you're shy and you just operate with that because you don't know anything else. And just language has so much power to the human brain that we don't even recognize what we're doing to themselves. So that's awesome. And I'm curious to ask more about finding the book, because when I found Jordan Peterson, when I found Jordan Peterson, I didn't dive into all his work. I didn't read his books specifically. That was the biggest change. I'd listened to him and I thought I had him figured out because I listened to all the podcasts he was on. I listened to him as a guest. I just really enjoyed how he spoke. And I loved how he worked of solving problems in the moment. That's a big influence for me to want to do this podcast. It was so much fun to watch his mind work in the moment and to come up with things and be challenged. And not just challenged with easily things that he can bat away, but real intellectuals that had to push him. And I really enjoyed that. But then I read his book within can't be much over a year ago, if less than that. And that was a whole different side of it. His book, The 12 Rules for Life, I cannot recommend to anybody. And that's what I'm saying. I was in a really decent place in my life, all things considered, when I read that book. And I didn't really need the book, but it still helped immensely. And just in reading it, I was thinking of different times in my life. If I had read this 2 years ago, oh man, if I read this chapter 4 years ago, like imagine. And just to see, it was the experience of reading that book was amazing, and the things that it gave me, but also almost more than that was the experience of what this book could give to other people. And there's going to be people that are in a certain spot, like it sounds like you were, where you really needed those words. And just to know the power of the book, it really breaks my heart to see how he is portrayed to people, and all the bullshit and all the media tricks that they play to try and paint him as this bad person, when all he wants to do, his true goal at the end of the day, is just to help people. And to know that the story you just told and how he helped you, there is thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of people that have that exact same story. And you can go listen to each one of these stories, and to see that people are just so willing to just denigrate him and paint him as this thing he's not, when there's these lives that have been saved, people that have not killed themselves because of his work. It just blows my mind. And it almost makes me really sad to see that, like, after knowing what he is and what he's given to people. So then Jordan Peterson and the Peterson Pals group has meant a lot and has done a lot for you. It sounds like. So then I'm curious, was it not until, if Jordan Peterson came first. That helped your life a lot. And then the PewDiePie thing with the Marcus Aurelius, is that when getting into more branching out past Jordan Peterson kind of started of into all these, okay. So that makes a little bit more sense, right? Because one of the biggest things for me with Jordan Peterson too is when you really read his stuff, you see that these are not his biggest thing. These are not my ideas. I get this piece from this guy. This is where I research. This comes from the, you know, Nietzsche and Marcus Aurelius and all these thinkers, right? And also the other side of it, he shows where some of the leftist stuff and some of the thinkers that they're coming off of, because nobody's ideas are really you know, their own. We're all building upon other stuff, but when you look at the structure, and you can do almost the ancestry of these ideas, right? Like to look, well, this comes from this person, this, and then you can actually look at the whole web of where these ideas come from, and you can really use your own judgment and look into these people. Okay, well, if Jordan Peterson is, you know, 20% Nietzsche, 20% this guy, 20, well, let's start looking into these people to see what their ideas and how much I enjoy their ideas, and can read their readings and see how much I affiliate with them, or how much like how much confidence I put in their ideas. And then that can work that way. But then it also works backwards too, of a lot of this wokest leftist stuff, this postmodernism, when somebody can accurately show you where these ideas come from, you do the phylogeny and go back up the tree of that, and you see just the absolute quacks that it comes from. It's like, oh yeah, this makes sense. This is actually something that you can show people, right? But if you don't go into it to that degree, you're never going to get that far up the tree to see all these things.
Yeah. I still need to, like, pretty much all the books on this bookshelf behind me are ones that I need to read.
Yeah,
and
same here.
I bought them all before the summer started, and I was like, oh, I'm going to read all these books this summer, but I've only gotten through a couple. But
yeah, I did the exact same thing, especially since starting this podcast, and kind of in me trying to just understand myself and why I'm doing things. I'm always asking myself questions of why I do that. But I think the reason I've gotten so into really upping my book game and getting back into that is just the fact of starting a podcast and having the what's the word, where you have to do something like it, the accountability of a podcast, of who I'm trying to be as a person, the accountability of trying to do that. I feel like reading is a big part of it, but now it takes something, because I've always loved reading. I've been a huge reader since I was a little kid. Like, I started reading Harry Potter at like a really young age, and like would crush through the books, right? And like all these different things and all these different fantasy series. So I have a real big place in my heart for like fantasy books and fiction. And then I've also found this new love of, you know, philosophy and those type of books and Jordan Peterson's work. So then I have this whole other area, and Ayn Rand and stuff that's just been blowing my mind lately. But then I also have this love of science and scientific stuff and these scientific books. So now I have like three different areas of reading I want to do. And with everything in my life right now, I have no time to read, and it kills me. And then these stacks of books, like this is just one stack that are built up all over here. Like, I have books for years right now, and I'm so excited to get back into them, but I'm also just trying to find that balance of what do I read? Like, what is, am I wasting my time reading, like, you know, the fantasy ones, when I have these books that I know are going to help me and move me along and help my understanding of the world and humans and science and all this stuff. It's a really tough go. And I find I've been really struggling with it lately. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually got back into reading because PewDiePie recommended Brave New World. And a lot of other people had recommended that to me. And I was like, oh shit, you know, maybe I'll try that. And I actually read in just one afternoon. I just sat down, read the whole thing, and it was like 3 hours.
Who wrote that again?
Aldous Huxley.
Right.
Yeah. And like the whole book is like a world where the government provides so much pleasure, and they like tell everyone like literally women are like encouraged to just fuck anyone, you know, like they have abortion palaces, like literally these giant citadels that like light up and they're golden, and like and if you stay with a man for longer than 2 or 3 days, it's really frowned upon, you know, that kind of shit. Like people aren't supposed to say I love you to each other. If you're feeling bad, you take a drug called Soma. Everyone has some, and it's like, it's very much like, but no one wants to read. They literally have made a world where people just like, even if the books are there, they're like, I don't want to read. Why would I want to read? You know? And so the main plot is the character goes to like where the savages live, the people who live outside of all of this, and they seem way happier, you know, and they bring one of these savages back and he doesn't understand anything. Like he says he has a mother, and they're like, oh, that's disgusting. You have a mother? Because everyone's born in a test tube there. You know, they literally make different levels of society. They have the alphas, the betas, the deltas, the omegas, and they've found a way to take one egg cell and turn it into 72 people.
Right.
So there are 72 twins, all the same people, and they're all like the lower workers, and they like indoctrinate them from a young age when they sleep with like headphones. They're just like, you're happy with your life, you don't want to do what the betas are doing because they're doing really hard work, way harder work than what you're doing. You should just be happy where you are. And it's so fucked up, you know. And I actually got into an argument with someone at my work because I was like saying like a lot of these like letting little kids watch like WAP music videos and shit, like it's just like leading us down a really bad path. And then he was just like, oh well, that's racist. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like, it has nothing to do with that.
I know. And that's and I think so much of that goes back to just shirking personal responsibility. So much of that, you know, like people don't want there to be responsibility as parents to look at that. They want, you know, the responsibility of the world. It's just society. It doesn't matter. It's hard to even encapsulate the full point because it's so wide ranging of like, so many people want to shirk that responsibility and they just don't want it to be their own fault. They don't want it to have, everybody's so stuck in this thing of everything happens to me. I have no real will in the world. Nothing's my fault. It's all, I can always blame someone else. I can always blame, you know, whatever the word of the day is, right? Like you said, he chose racism in that moment, but you could choose, you know, bigotry and sexism and xenophobia. It's always something else, but it's never you. It doesn't matter what all those things are. And sometimes those things are right. And sometimes those things are accurate. But if it's never you, that is the issue at the bottom of all of that. Is you just need to, you know, stop, become okay with the fact that you're going to have some responsibility and you're going to have some things that it's your fault. You might fuck it up, but that's kind of how the game works. You got to fuck things up to learn, right? Like it's
exactly
interesting. It's very interesting.
But it kind of started because I was like, I was talking about how in my program I would meet all these like SJWs that were like, I hate objectifying women. But then like when we would be alone, they would talk about all the porn they watched. And I was like, do you not understand how these things don't line up? I'm sorry.
Right. But it does that lines up exactly to me of, you know, the reason they're so into this you know, this SJW way of going about this, right? Because I hate people that objectify women too, in a certain way, right? That go too far with it, right? Like, but I don't see that in myself. I'm not worried about that myself. I'm very proud of, it's taken a lot of messing up and a lot of probably accidentally hurting people, probably hurting people on purpose to get me to this point. And I'm very aware of that to where I am now, but I am so proud of the way I am with women and what I am, that I don't have that giant fear underpinning of I need to be out there railing against protecting women because I'm the one they need to be protected against, right? It's almost like your shadow. I don't have that, right? Like, you're
right. It's kind of like they're internalizing it as I'm the person that they need to be protected from.
That's right? Always what this stuff is. These people that are so anti, you know, like if you're super anti-environment, you probably have a real resentment in what you're doing to the world because you do care about that. And it's not a bad thing, right? Like none of these are bad things. It's that you see the world through your own lens. Everybody does, but the worst things in yourself is what you're going to go out and go out against. But so much, you know, the doth protest too much. Those people that are so against gay people, just everything, like your whole life is built around 90% of the time, those people are closetedly gay, right? Like, it's
you see that so often, right?
So often. And you see that trope, not just in the gay, but in all these things, right? The people that are so anti this and anti that. And that's a tough thing for people to swallow because there then are people that are genuinely not that way and genuinely care. And that is their cause, right? Like, but it's to try and to separate the wheat from the chaff, the people that genuinely care about these causes and the people that are just animated by their own darker sides that they're not taking in and they don't want to deal with it themselves. So they want to deal with it in the world, right? Like that's the big thing that's hard to separate out because you don't want to demonize these people that genuinely do care and are genuinely trying to do the work on these things. And if, you know, have worked on it themselves and still recognize it as an issue, right? It's a tough balance to find in my head because I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to close myself off to anybody that has anything SJW within them that they're not maybe truly a good person or truly. And the biggest litmus test for that I can find is trying to separate out what their care is. Is their care about the cause, or is their care about how they fight for the cause? Because there's so many people that they say, you know what, I just hate racism. My whole entire being, everything I'm dedicating myself is to fight racism, right? Nothing wrong with that. But is it actually that, or is it my whole life is to fight racism through this one lens? This is how we do it. If you're not on board with this specific way that I say we're fighting racism, you're a bad person, right? It doesn't matter. And they'll demonize somebody that is fighting racism in a different way, right? Through a different mindset that has a different viewpoint. They will demonize them too because they're not on board with us. And what that shows me is you don't care about the cause. You care about your social brownie points and the way that you want to fight for the cause, and because that gives you power. If you are the carrying the flag of anti-racism, you want anti-racism to be the only way. You don't want to have, nuanced conversation be the way forward, because that doesn't give you power. That you want everything to be anti-racism, right? Like, and that's where I see it. And same thing with the white knighting stuff of these people. Like, do you actually care about, protecting women, or are you just manifesting your own stuff? Because it's going to, in your actions. And again, words are fucking fickle. Actions is what matters. And that's where you can start to see this, right? Like, and that's where I go to everything. And my big thing on the mainstream media or politicians, I don't want to hear a thing you say, because none of it's true. None of it, it's all intentionally misleading. Why don't I just watch you and see what you do? And you'll tell me exactly where you stand on all these issues, because I'll watch your actions, right? That's way more true. And it's funny to say that words mean nothing, because I have a podcast where literally I'm trying to make money off my words. But that's why it's so important to me to match my actions, to match who I am, and to be accountable to the words that I'm saying, so that my words have meaning. Because, people don't want to listen to Justin Trudeau because he's fucking bullshit and lied, and just nothing has come out of him. He has proved to zero people that he actually is going to do what he says, or means what he says, or is thinking about what he says, and it's not just written for him. Right. I want to find the opposite. I want to find, the Joe Rogans of the world, for all his faults, that, as somebody that actually watches a ton of them, I could tell you exactly what his faults are, way better than, the hit pieces that they're trying to pull out. But even with that, he still is trying to live what he says, and he's walking the walk in a bunch of different ways. In some ways he fails and he talks about it, right? Like, I would so much rather follow that than follow somebody that's just, putting on this giant sham. It's interesting. But I feel like so many people's reaction to that is just they understand it to a point, but then they just do what I talked about, is just demonizing that whole side of it. And they just retreat onto the right and away from the left, and just like, they're being crazy. You're not leaving compassion. You're not trying to bring them over. You're just separating yourself farther and farther, which is, again, I bring that up in the Peterson Pals group, is I always worry I don't think it is, but I worry that there's pieces of that, of just going into that group and retreating past, instead of, trying to pull more people in and trying to hold compassion for those other sides and those things that are causing so much hurt, which is very fair to me to say. When I'm graduating university, I'm not within that system. I'm not getting bombarded with it 24/7 all the time. I feel like that's also a very different space to be in. And it's probably a lot easier for me to say on the outside of it, but I don't know. I often worry about that.
I'm scared to go back.
Yeah.
Like, after everything that's gone on over, like, I swear to God, someone's going to say, like, silence is violence to me or something. And I'll be like, bro, I'm just doing my schoolwork. Like, just let me fucking be, man.
Right. Exactly. And I think what's going to, not to preach, but I mean, what's probably going to help you of going through that part, because you're going to deal with it 100%. You're going to deal with that. It's going to hit. But whether you hear that and receive it and react with anger, or react with love, and just, I feel so sorry for you. Like, I'm sorry you're so brainwashed, and that you don't have anybody strong that's a better archetype in your life that you can form yourself after. I'm sorry that's what's the main diet of your body, right? Like, when I look at a 6-year-old kid that's really overweight, like really fat, it's like, I don't blame that kid. It's like, oh man, like, fuck, you had a tough upbringing, right? That's the exact way it's when I see a 22-year-old person that is so brainwashed with this stuff. It's like, yeah, it's frustrating to deal with, because it's circular logic, and they're impacting policy, and they're really bringing a lot of harm out into the world, right? Without recognizing it. And it's easy to get angry at that, but just to instead just go, man, this poor kid, like, he probably had no real strong figures in their life to show what actual values are, to show the non-toxic sides of masculinity, to show, the balance of the divine masculine and feminine, to be a well-rounded individual that can look at things with nuance. Like, I just feel bad for you, man. Like, fuck. And again, I didn't have that perspective when I was in university. I was exactly that guy, like, fuck these people, and was reacting that way. I was there. And this is, 4 or 5 years removed, and looking back on it and understanding and doing a lot of work on myself to get to that point. But it's also the same way that you say, with the drug and alcohol stuff, you want people in the Peterson pals group that are younger, right? Like sometimes as young as, 16, 17, 18, you want them to see those pitfalls before. That's exactly what I'm trying to show, is like, I really worry about you following the same pitfalls I did, of going so many years without that compassion and not moving forward and not bettering myself and living in a place of love, because you don't want to be in a hateful place all the time and just getting being so reactive to all this stuff, when you can find a place to have forgiveness and compassion. Your life gets so much better and it's so much more enjoyable. That I want them to see that earlier, and maybe that cuts 1 or 2 years off of that realization coming to them of, you know what, we're all the same. We got a little bit of different mental diet that put us into these different places in life. Maybe we don't visually show it that we're, 500 pounds, but mentally you are, right? Like mentally you're overweight, you don't exercise, you don't, right? Yeah. Like it's amazing. It's just, that's a framework that not enough people have caught on to, but I feel like it is going to catch on to, and I'm just trying to be ahead of the game. I feel like people are going to understand this. And it's very similar to what I brought up earlier of the Sam Harris free will thing of, if you listen to Sam Harris, he thinks, jails and all this stuff are going to become looked at in maybe 100 years as inhumane, because we're going to understand that, yeah, you're in jail. Yeah. You, robbed a jewelry store to try and get money for drugs or something. But at the end of the day, that's not really his fault. With his upbringing and what he saw and what he was given in life, that was the only way he would go. That was exactly where he went to. And the fact that we are holding people against it, right? Like if you're a danger to society and we have to keep it, that might be a way that we have to keep, but we're going to treat you different. We're not going to treat you like a criminal. We're going to treat you as if somebody that had a rough go. And then we're going to start to see the rehabilitation point come from that, because the reason people aren't rehabilitating is because we're treating them that way. And we're not having that compassion, that understanding that they probably have a lot of reason when you scope out and look at them from the time they were born and the love that they got and the things that they went through and the shit that they saw to get to that point, right? Like that was a big, as much as I'm not somebody that operates and articulates my life off of the idea of not having free will, I sure find it helps a lot in just as a framework to look at the world as if, free will might be a myth. And I'm going to every once in a while put my Sam Harris hat on and just look at the world through this lens. Not to say that I have to believe it or really give into it all the way, but it's a helpful framework to look at these things, because it opens up your eyes to things I would never have looked at the world that way and had, which is, through the lens of Sam Harris. I'm very thankful for him for that. I really disagree with Sam Harris on a ton of things, right? Like we are not one-to-one whatsoever, but I'm so thankful for him to be able to, he worked hard and had to take a lot of licks to get to that point where he could really formalize that for somebody like me to understand it that deeply. And now I have this whole other framework that I can look through the world through that is so beneficial for me. I just, and again, just not to bring it all the way back to myself, but I hope to do that for other people someday, of just this weird lens that I look at the world through. If people can just try that on every once in a while and it helps benefit them, I've done my job, right? And I'm betting everything really that I do have that, and that I have that to give to the world, right? Like I'm which is a scary bet to take, but I don't know. It's better than me just working for some corporation that I hate for ever and doing things that I hate and hurting people for, shareholders, because it's the right thing to do for the shareholders, right? Like that doesn't feel too good either. So I might as well take the risk, bet on myself and try and believe in myself that I have something to give, right? Like, I don't know. I'm getting all philosophical on myself right now.
Well, I actually did take the job because you remind me a lot of PewDiePie.
Really?
I feel that you have a lot of potential because you're very genuine.
Yeah. And that's, and the genuineness, and that's all it is, right? Like it feels very egotistical to talk about that. But like the thing that I believe more than anything is that I'm just genuine and that I love myself. And I feel like if I can be genuine, I can love myself, other people are going to love me too. Right. And I'm a very lovable person. I have a lot of love to give. And I also need a lot. I have a big hole somewhere that I need to fill, and I want to, fill it with love. Right. And where that gets squirrely for people is when they have to put on this disingenuous act to get there. Like if you're an actor and you have to, be these roles, you're filling that love, but it's somebody else's love, right? They're loving you for some other role you played. It's not for truly being you, where I want to just, I want people to believe in me for the things that I believe in and to love me for the things that I love, right? My humor, my goofiness, my overly lovable, just, I want to love everybody and I want everyone to get along kind of thing, right? Like it's kind of cheesy and kind of silly, but that's who I am. And if I tried to be anything different, I wouldn't be me, right? And it would come across disingenuous, I think. And I just hope that eventually people will recognize that all I'm doing here, whether you like what I say or don't like what I say, I'm not trying to lie to you. I'm just trying to be honest of what I think, and I'll change my mind, and you'll see me change my mind in the moment, right? Like my favorite part of the podcast is when somebody hits me with a real good counterpoint, and I'm like, well, shit, like that. You know what? You kind of got me there. Like I probably need to sit and digest that for a bit, but yeah, no, I see it differently now. Like that's so exciting to me. That is so much fun. Like that's so rewarding. And I think that people will pick up on that eventually and know that, like even if you're so fresh, because I've had this experience where you listen to a podcast and it's someone you really look up to, but they're just so wrong on this one issue. And like, man, you're completely missing this whole other side of it. Like, oh, that's so frustrating. But then my favorite podcast is just like, I know it's just a matter of time. One of my favorites, do you know who Charlemagne the God is? At all?
I think I've heard of them, but I don't know them specifically.
So he's a radio host. He came up in South Carolina, North Carolina, one of the Carolinas. Bounced around radio all over the place. Really interesting dude. Really spiritual. It's gotten into a lot of mental health stuff later on, of like writing books on it and stuff. But he ended up in this job at Hot 10 whatever in New York. It's called the Breakfast Club, and it's like this huge cultural icon on the East Coast of like bringing in all these names and huge in the rap world and all this. But he's someone I found a couple of years ago, and we are very, very different people on a lot of has so much of the SJW stuff in him, right? Like he's very much in that world, but if given a good argument, he's moldable, right? Like he sometimes says like some of the most woke shit that I'm like, fuck Charlemagne, like, come on, you know better than this, right? But then he gets on with somebody that pushes him on. He's like, oh yeah, that is fucking stupid. Like, why did I think that? Oh, and he adjusts and he goes with it. And I love that in him, because now when he goes off on a rant of something that it's like, oh man, like this is just so sad, but I just know you don't know better. But I know if you do, if somebody meets you with a better argument, you're going to take it in. And I love that in him so much. And it allows me to be so much more open to the other sides too, because I see that he's malleable and that he can see both sides. And and knowing that, I know that the reason he's bringing kind of these wokeism things forward is because somebody's argued that to him well in his ear. And he probably has some of the best people on that side, right? Like we talked about, it's not all bad people on that side. There's some real compassionate people that are trying to make change, right? And he probably brings that forward, but then he gets it balanced out by all these things. But now I'm so much more open hearing the woke lefty shit from him than I am some of these other people that have so proven that even given a really great argument, they're just going to plug their ears and go, la, 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 and not listen to it. Right. That I don't want to hear it from you, because like, fuck, I don't want to listen to that bullshit. I just know this is more propaganda, brainwashing shit. Whereas Charlemagne's so genuine about how he goes about it. It really can impact somebody like me that maybe isn't the most receptive to that. But now I love having him in my back pocket of, now I know I'm not stuck in this echo chamber of just this stuff. I'm getting a little bit of both, and right. And you have to find your balance of what you can put up with, but it's I just love that in people. And that's something that I feel like, if you're going to do that in like taking it back to video game journalism, like we talked about at the start, of somebody that can show that of, yeah, they might do some of the shill stuff, but then they'll talk about it, right? Like, yeah, maybe I gave that game a pretty good review, but you know what? Nintendo's really hard to get into. You kind of got to treat it right. And, like, yeah, I probably should have said this, but if they're honest about it and they show it, right? Like that's the endearing stuff. That's what's going to show people, oh, this is the guy I want to listen to. This is the reviews I want to get. He might play the game a little bit to get in because it's kind of an industry where you have to, at least at the start, until you grow your own audience. But if they can show you that piece that they're doing it a little bit different, they have a little bit more value to what they're bringing in, a little bit more, just belief in themselves and what they're doing, that it's not that same bullshit you're going to get from everybody else. It's interesting. I'm curious to you with what you've done in school so far and kind of what you've seen. Do you have any idea of maybe when you do finish, kind of some things you'd like to take a shot at and things you'd like to try to bring to the world just kind of on your own? Or is there a type of job that you'd like to get? Like, I'm just curious along the way of adding that knowledge into your tool bag and kind of learning this stuff, if it's articulated to you, anything that maybe inspires you going forward that you'd want to give a shot at.
Well, I definitely want to do more editing as much as I can, because I really enjoy it. And it kind of like, I get into you just get into like that zone where like time just goes by so fast and you don't even notice. Right. Like it's just so enjoyable for me because you take all these little clips and you make it into something more tangible, right? You make something whole at the end of the day. Right. And cool. I really enjoy that. Yeah. But I mean, there's so much with that degree. Like I could just be running social media for someone like really? That, like when we had our like initial talks, like I've learned so much about like how to build communities. I'm actually going to be taking a course on just how to interview people properly. And that's not even just for journalism. That's like for if you're interviewing for a job, how to know how you should behave how you should behave when you're interviewing someone else. Yeah. And it's it's actually just crazy. The only thing I know for sure is I'm probably, like, now that I went to Toronto, I'll probably be moving there.
Yeah.
Just because also there's way more opportunity there for that degree.
Mm-hmm.
But and also I literally have like one good friend here right now.
Yeah.
And like I know so many more people in Toronto now as a result of this group. So I mean,
which is like, just a crazy thought to think of, like, who would have thought a Facebook group, even like me a year ago, who would have thought like a Facebook group could have that type of impact where, you know, you could move your whole life based on that, right? Like, and who that introduces you to. But I think before the Peterson Pals, I didn't realize what power one of those communities could have, because I always, and not to blow smoke up Alex's ass like everybody in the group does all the time, but I truly believe the reason I never thought that could happen or it could have that amount of effect was just the fact that at a certain level in those Facebook groups, somebody has to admin, and that just creates power and creates structures, and shit falls apart from it. And it's so admirable to me to watch Alex be able to run that group and just allow whatever goes. Like there's some ground rules, but it's self-policing, right? If someone's being a prick, you know, it's a great environment and people don't want it to be that, and people will step in if they had to, but that doesn't need to come from some overbearing idea. But I've never seen it done this way, which gives me a lot of hope. And I think people have probably seen this in Discords as well. I think that's probably, I'm not a big Discord guy. I've never really got into that, but I imagine that's a lot of where these streamers and stuff are finding a lot of that community, because it is just kind of Wild West and self-policing. And it's fascinating to me to see that can be accomplished. Like it's just
well, when I was out there, I was like, if someone came to me in February when I joined this group and told me I would be in Toronto hanging out with Alex and a bunch of other people, I wouldn't have believed them.
Exactly.
Like I wouldn't have at all. But or even to say that I would want to move there.
Yeah.
You know, like it's absolutely insane to me.
Yeah.
And like oh no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, or just the feeling alone of what kind of community you can feel from a group like that. Of obviously the going for visits, and that is all a manifestation of it, but just the feeling of it. And I felt this too right away of just, oh, this is different. This is a different sense of community. The people and the stories that would come out of people just saying, you know what, I've just been creeping for the last 2 weeks. Like I haven't really posted anything, but I just want to tell everyone like how thankful I am for this. Like this has really affected my mental health to have more people. And you had kind of brought up when the group was just starting and everyone was kind of doing their introduction, like, hey, I'm this person, I'm going through this, of just to hear how many people are just saying like, hey, I'm in my second year of university, I feel very alone. Like just, I want to talk with, like, I don't agree with all this shit that's happening around, but I have no voice to say anything. I feel so alone. And just to hear that repeated over and over again, and to see the group that it formed, just these people that all feel the same thing and feel so lonely. And the fact that there's, you know, hundreds of people that are so similar to you and are so willing to give you the space to figure that shit out on your own and to help other people figure their own shit out. Like it's just it's been cool to watch. It's been interesting to me. And just to throw it out there, because I'm sure I'll mention it in the intro, but I don't think we've even mentioned it. So Cole has been the person that's helping me get the YouTube channel updated and doing all the editing for that for the past, I don't know how many months now, at least 2 or 3.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. I think 3. Yeah.
So that's in talking about the editing, the work that we've been doing. And yeah, we had at the very start, before we even got into that, I kind of, because I'm very picky about who I work with, and me and Cole had a conversation like this. We didn't record it, but just, you know, about my dreams for the podcast, and just kind of being straight up with Cole about, you know, this is something I really believe in, and I want to take it far. This is not just a hobby. This is not just you know, something I'm trying out. No, I really believe in this, and I have, you know, big plans. Like this is the start, and this is the amount of time I have to put in, and this is what I can do right now. But eventually I'm going to be diving into this full time, and I'm going to be, you know, wanted to do streaming and to do, you know, these other kind of ideas, and some things I haven't even talked about on the podcast of where I want to take it, and to gauge your reaction of what you thought about that. And I think, you know, me and you had to both understand each other to make sure that we were on the right path so that we could go there. And it was a really fun conversation. And it's something that, you know, it's becoming more and more real every day. Like now that the YouTube channel's caught up, like you said, like that is such an exciting thing for me. And I'm very thankful for that, because that was something that was really weighing on me, to have to watch the YouTube channel slowly get out of date and to get so far ahead of it. That was really hard for me to watch. It felt like my baby was just being like, I don't know, like left crying in the car, and you just can't get to it. You know what I mean? Like, but so I'm very thankful for that. And where I was going with that is I'm glad to hear that you enjoy the work, because I feel like also I'm such a weird dude. I hate putting people out, and I hate having people be inconvenienced by me, that I always worry, like, even though, you know, like we negotiated and we decide on what we're doing and what you'd get out of it, what I get out of it. And we agreed on that. And we're both satisfied. I still worry at the end of the day, like, oh, does he hate doing this? Like, is it too much? Like, I might, you know what I mean? So I'm glad to actually hear that. Makes me feel good to hear that you do enjoy the work of editing, and makes me excited for the future, because I think there's going to be so much more to come. Like, we're just kind of doing the bare minimum at this point of just keeping it updated. But when we really take that step,
we should really talk about maybe doing some ads.
Yeah, for sure.
Once you get some time to find some clips, like we can make some like quick chops, or even just what I was saying with having you take the sweater off. That would be a very easy, like, throw it all over TikTok, and like people would be like, "Who is this guy?" Right?
Yeah. Fuck, that is so funny. And even just to like to start a TikTok page, because like I don't have a TikTok for this. Like, I've so vehemently prevented myself from downloading TikTok to even like, I've never even seen the app, like, other than TikTok videos like getting shared on other things. I've never
they got on Facebook. Yeah.
I don't even know what the interface looks like, and I'm proud of that. Like, I just know, and knowing myself, I don't look badly on anybody that uses TikTok or any of the things like that. Like, my initial hesitancy to it was, as soon as it got built, I just, through the channels I listened to and how much of a weird dude I am, I heard immediately that it was a Chinese app that was coming in, like, when it was only been around for like less than a month. So I was very much anti it right off the hop. And then it wasn't until months later that it got the traction that it did. But that was more of my like staying away from it. But just to know now of what kind of time sink that would be to jump into it, I just like, I got way too many things. I have too many books to read. I can't download any more apps. You know, like Instagram is already a tough one to keep updated. But at the same time, you're right. I need to have that for the show to grow. I need to do that, and I need to get someone that can help me through it, so it doesn't have to be on me, because I know that I would never do it. But I'm so excited to take those next steps, because I think that's a great idea. Like what we were talking about with the sweater thing was, before we started, I just said, yeah, and at some point I'll probably have to, you know, weasel out of this sweater while trying to keep one headphone on. And Cole's like, yeah, I got to watch you do that in so many episodes while editing, of just the awkwardness of it. You're saying just to cut together all the clips of me trying to sneak my sweater off mid conversation and keep it going, which is so awkward, and like trying not to show my belly and all that shit. Like, fuck, that is just hilarious. And you're right. Like, for someone to have the not wherewithal, that's not the right word, but just the idea to take that and what to do with it, what to run with it, to know, oh, I could edit that together, and TikTok would be the perfect place for it, right? Like, I agree completely. And it's just like, my mind doesn't work that way to think of that. Like, I'm so much of content and speaking in the moment, but then what to do with it after, I think it'd become a strong suit of mine if I really put my mind towards doing it. But right now, it's not something that I work on, but I'm excited to get that skill and to work with somebody that, you know, you talk about learning some of that stuff in school and putting those tools to work. Like, that gets me so excited for, you know, the next steps and where it could go in the future. Is just, I really like that. That's awesome. TikTok page. But that's the thing. I feel like I could, that was kind of my thought of that too, is like, I'm sure like 1 or 2 videos would be easy, but then after that, I'm like, I have no idea what else to put on there, because I just don't know the medium of like what type of stuff gets shared on it, right?
At that point, you can just put clips up, because like you see JP clips, you see Joe Rogan
you're right.
clips. It's kind of, but I feel like the sweater video would make people go, oh, who is this guy?
Yeah.
You know, they'd be like, this is really funny, but like, let's look into it more.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree. And that's why I think you'd want to put out some actual clips of like content of like what I'm talking about, and then maybe put out that one in the first bit. Because I've also heard that TikTok, when you first make an account, they really boost up your visibility and really get you hooked on it. They really put out your first 10 or so videos. They make them kind of not go viral, but they really give them a little extra boost. So it'd be fun to look at it through that lens of, okay, how do we maximize this? How do we put some things out that actually show who I am and what kind of content I want people to see? And then how do you find the ones that are almost the hooks to bring them into that stuff? You know, like the icing, the bait on the hook kind of thing. Like, that's just interesting. And when you put it through that framework, that excites me, because now it's business. Now it's that kind of stuff. When it's social media, I'm so hesitant to get excited about it, because I see the damage that social media does, and I'm hesitant to get into it. But when I can put it through the frame of like, it's a business decision, I'm doing this for the podcast, and like, that gets me now excited about it again. And I can kind of put more of my effort towards it without that natural recoil that I don't know what it is within me yet. But I just have such a recoil to that kind of stuff for some reason. I just don't want to dive into it.
Yeah, I mean, the only TikToks I see are ones that people send to me, and like PewDiePie does reactions to them, so I watch those. But each one is like, TikTok is cringe.
Yeah.
But apparently, like, the way it works is the first like 2 or 3 days you use it are really cringe, but once it kind of gets a better idea of what you're into, then things like really start to filter out.
Yeah.
But man, some of the things I've seen on there, I'm like, what the fuck?
Like so, and that's so then PewDiePie's come up a couple times, and I'm just curious, Jordan Peterson, Marcus Aurelius, we've kind of got to those points. I'm curious specifically because it's my domain. Do you listen to any other podcasts? Like, is there any podcasts on it? Or are you more of a YouTube streamer kind of guy?
I do a lot of audiobooks, but I need to get into more podcasts.
Yeah.
The thing is, for some reason, audiobooks are easier to like. I can't do audiobooks that are fiction though. Like I'm usually listening to like a philosophy book or something, I just listened to Carl Jung's autobiography, and now I'm listening to the Red Book.
Yeah.
Which like really you can see the reflection of JP's work in his work.
Big time.
Very, very clearly.
100%. Yeah. Carl Jung is probably like when I was saying like it's 20% Nietzsche, like Carl Jung's got a big percentage in that one for sure. And it's funny you say that about not reading like fantasy books on audiobook. What I find is I agree with you. I prefer if an audiobook first time, I prefer those type of books, right? For whatever reason. But if I've read something before, then I really like the audiobooks because especially if it's something like Harry Potter, where I've read probably the Harry Potter series 1 to 7 or whatever it is, 30 times, 40 times, like it's kind of ridiculous. The amount of it. So I know those books back and forwards. So I can crank it up to like 3 times speed, cruise through it. And like, I might not be.
It brings you joy, right?
It just brings me joy. It's just like throwing that old movie on, but I can get through it so quick because I can put it on. I can read I'm a very strong reader, right? And I can read to the equivalent of probably like listening at 2 times speed or 2.5 times speed, right? Like if I read for 10 minutes or listen for 10 minutes on 2.5, I'll get roughly through. But if it's a book I've read, I can crank that up to 3.5, 4 times speed, really take it in and understand and get the joy from it. But I'm reading the book in half the time, right? Or I can do this where I'll listen to 2 chapters while I'm driving. Then when I get home, I can put the book open, read the next 2 chapters, and then go back to that and float back and forth. But you're right. If it's something I've never read before, I can't really do it for fiction. I like to really immerse myself and to stop and to be able to go on those tangents and think. Where with audiobook, it keeps going on ahead of you, which is fine for things that are trying to educate you and maybe go on that. But when you're trying to paint a story and feel the feelings and the emotions of it, right? Like I find that that's how I am with audiobooks. It's interesting to think about. I don't think I've ever actually given it that much thought to really break it down like that. Fascinating. So not many podcasts, but lots of audiobooks. Other than PewDiePie, in maybe that realm of guys that are, YouTuber streamers, who else is on your list that you really enjoy?
I watch Neanners. That's pretty much the only other person. And I started watching her because she's a VTuber, which means like she has like an anime avatar. Like the camera sees what she does, but it makes an anime girl interact.
Really?
Right? And that already sounds really weird, but the only reason I got into her is because she was playing Bloodborne. And so like the juxtaposition of this cute anime girl playing like this horrifying video game.
Yeah.
And she did Dark Souls drunk. She literally like just got completely loaded and played Dark Souls on camera. And I was just like, fuck, this is great.
That's awesome.
And yeah, she did an alarm clock video where it was just, hey motherfucker, wake the fuck up. And that's literally my alarm now every fucking morning.
So I'm curious about that what did you call it, that technology of like putting on like where the camera sees you and puts together, what did you call that? Like, is there a name for that?
VTuber. So it's like a virtual tuber.
Oh, okay. I understand that. This is new to me. How long has that been around? Like, has she been doing that for a long time? Like, is this something new? Because I feel like I must have seen it, but I never really knew that. I never put the impact together of what that different experience that could be. Has she been doing that for a long time?
I think she's been doing it for 3 years, but the concept I think has been around for like 5 or 6, but it's very niche on YouTube.
Yeah.
And like the only reason I know about her is because I have a friend who's like a super weeb, like just super into all Japanese things. And he saw that she played Bloodborne and then he sent it to me and I was like, oh, that's funny. So I'll look into her a bit more. And then she's just actually so funny. So I was like, okay. And now she does like voices for anime and stuff too. Like she actually is making a crazy amount of money off of it.
But that is exactly like what you just explained right there is exactly what I'm betting my whole life on right now is one weird connection, like Bloodborne, of somebody knowing, oh, you like Bloodborne, right? And her, whatever the name was, I already forgot.
Yeah, Neanners.
That I think I didn't forget. I think I just didn't know if I'd be able to pronounce it correctly. Of her being so genuinely who she is, probably, right? Like if she's a successful streamer, that's the core of everything of that. You could just come in, it's not your cup of tea, or maybe it is your cup of tea, but you don't know it is until you go into it. It might seem a bit odd on the face of it, but you go in and you see like, oh, this person's genuine, they're funny, they're entertaining, and you stick around for it. But all you were doing at the offset is just coming in to check out this novel thing of just this weird, this piece. And then that happens time over time over time, and it grows and it grows and grows. And now you have this audience that believes in you and knows you on this deeper level because you've been so genuine with you. Now that starts opening up doors, because now this anime, they could hire just, Joe Schmo voice actor off the street, or they could hire Yanners, who comes with their audience of, I don't know, I'm going to guess somewhere between 10,000 to like maybe 100,000 people that really genuinely care about that. I have no idea what size she is. Could be way bigger than that, way smaller than that. But the point is, now you're bringing to that anime this built-in crowd, which is now opening up doors to you of all these different things and all these different things. And maybe she's into League of Legends, let's just say, right? And maybe she's really into that and had nothing to do with any of that, but just the fact that she's building up her own audience and stuff. And maybe she would deep down would love to be on just an analyst desk for the esports for League of Legends, right? But the fact that she has her own, that opens up those doors too. And it starts to open up all these doors into your interest, because you can take that genuineness that you've been able to show and that skill of being genuine on camera, or in a sense documented, and you can now apply it to all these areas, right? And that's what I'm betting on, is like, if I can do that too and start to bring that, now there's things that I can bring to, I love MMA. If there's a local Canadian, there is local Canadian MMA places that put on shows. If I can have, a couple hundred really genuinely interested people in what I do and just want to see me succeed, if I can bring that to them, that's a huge, that's a huge thing that I'm bringing to them that I can already bring. Like, at a certain level, having a couple extra 100 people come watch something because I'm going to be on it is not nothing. It's not huge, but then maybe that couple hundred turns into a couple thousand, turns into 10,000. Then now the doors that opens are different than the doors that open when you had a couple hundred. But just to believe in that and have faith in that process that you're going to get there. And all that it depends on is that you show up every day, you're consistent and you're genuine, right? And that you don't give up.
Is a lot like working out. Everyone starts at the same point.
Yep.
Or at least there are very few people like, the late night talk show hosts that are on. When people start on YouTube, they start on YouTube and that's it, like you have no one and you just have to. I just hate that self-promotion is, frowned upon so much.
And not even the frown, like it is, but I find myself, I have such an issue with self-promotion. Even the Peterson Bowles group, when I have somebody on for an interview like Alex or like Elijah or like Ethan, that I know it's something that people want to hear. They probably want to know that I did an episode with these people that they've interacted as part of the group, but still takes everything in me to go and say like, hey, come check out this book, because it's self-promotion. It feels so fucking gross and icky. I just want people to naturally come and find it, but you're never going to grow unless you do that self-promotion. That's the thing of, at this point, and that's something that as soon as I take the jump to dive into this full time, that's got to turn off of, no, this is my brand. This is my business. This is what I do for a living. Like self-promotion is part of it. And I know that's a big, scary step that I have to take. And that's probably been part of the reason holding me back from taking that step, is to know that, because it's also very scary. It's a nice crutch to be able to lean on, to be honest with you, Cole, of, yeah, the show is not huge, but I haven't even advertised. It doesn't matter. I haven't even been trying to self-promote it. That's a very easy crutch to lean on, and to know that that's going to get kicked out from under you. And now it is completely on you how big the show gets. And it's, to your benefit too. That scares the fuck out of me, but also really excites me. But it's, it's not just society. It's definitely inbuilt of that ickiness, that feeling like you're promoting yourself for some reason. It's innate. I feel like it's deeper than society at some level. For some people don't have a lick of that. And they, you can see it on Instagram, right? Like that's almost what Instagram is, the exact opposite of that, having no shame of that. Just, look at me, right? Like that's, but for some reason that's never been who I am, but it's going to have to become who I am, at least at some point. But I hope that I can back it up and people will genuinely see that I'm having to turn that on. That's not innate to me. My genuineness is just like, what? I just really believe in what I'm doing here. And I hope that speaks to people, right? And I hope that it starts to grow. But in order to start that ball rolling so that people start to see it and come and check it out, and people can tell other people, I'm going to have to start that with a little bit of self-promotion. Ugh. Yuck.
I feel that's maybe why I don't really promote my music a lot either. Just because it's also like, then I put it out there.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
people don't like it, then it's like, but right now I haven't really told anyone about it. So like, if there's only like five listens on a song, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just out there. you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. And that's exactly its attack vectors, right? Like as soon as it's the flip side of, there's so much that being genuine and being vulnerable gives you in life. It's just it's so bountiful, but everything has two sides, right? The flip side of that is you are giving people the ammunition to know exactly what would hurt you, and right, and to know that, right, you're opening yourself up to the world, you're being vulnerable. That's the flip side of vulnerability, is you're opening yourself up to be hurt, and that's one of the scariest parts of this podcast. And less for me because I'm so I just have this, I'm so anxiety ridden and endlessly confident at the same time, but my family and my friends and them, and to see that I'm not just opening myself up to this, I'm opening up all the people that are around me, everyone that I impact, right? And I have faith that I can do that in a positive way and I can make it worth that for those people, but it's still a reality that I have to walk through and I have to be, aware of and treat the right way so that I don't hurt anybody unintentionally, right? Like I have to be very cognizant. And I did that when I first started the podcast, of kind of, talking to my family and talking with my girlfriend, just saying, like, I know you did not sign up for this, but I believe in this, and whatever degree, like I will never bring you up on the pod if you don't want to be. Like, I don't want whatever level you're okay with, I will match that, because I don't want you guys to have to pay for my sins. That's not the right way to put it, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, but that's something you have to think about with this too, because you're right. Like there's more to it than just, being vulnerable and getting all the accolades that come with it. So, your music, I'm curious. So then, do you, like I said, the ability to just look at it as if, it's just out there is really comfortable, but is there also any part of you that does, like, deep down want to tell people about it and want to hold it up and be more proud of it and trying to bring people there to get that? Because I always feel both things, is that I love that comfortability of not promoting it and not doing that, but then I also secretly underneath, I am really proud of it, and I do want people to see it. I'm curious for you of kind of where you land in that spectrum. I'm sure it's somewhere in the middle, but I'm curious where you land with your music.
Well, I've certainly I never really showed my music to anyone until like last December,
Yeah.
when someone at my work was chatting with me and I showed them some
Yeah.
music and they were like, "Oh, this is actually pretty good." And I was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, no one said that to me before." And then
Yeah.
I went from there, and in one of my classes, like I made a lo-fi hip hop song.
Yeah.
And because a lot of people listen to that when they're studying, I was like, "Oh, hey, if you guys like lo-fi, check out this song." And
Yeah.
like a bunch of people were like, "Oh my God, that's so good." And
Yeah.
then I started actually making like orchestral music
Hmm.
because I have all of the orchestra like plugins.
Yeah.
And so I made one of those and posted that in one of my classroom like chats, and people were like, "Oh
Mhm.
my God, this is really, really good." And then
Yeah.
another guy I know was like, "Man, you could like make music for video games." And
Yeah.
then and then it kind of became scary, where it was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this actually could, like, if I keep pushing this, this could be my identity,"
I know exactly what you mean. Oh, that is so funny.
And so, like,
Oh,
yeah, I've made so much music, but I don't really put, like, I have probably 200 projects that are more or less done, but I never do the final push,
yeah.
like all the extra little bit that needs to be done to it. But if I
And
did, I probably, because my cousin runs like the drum and bass scene in my city, and that's what I predominantly listen to. And like you were talking about dancing, I actually used to be like 300 pounds. I used to be really overweight.
yeah,
Lost it. Also drugs, but raving.
that helps, right?
Raving,
Yeah.
dancing from 8 p.m. till 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
definitely makes you.
That'll shed the
But
pounds.
I was showing him my music, and
Yeah.
he was like, "Man, this is really good." And I'd never heard him compliment me ever. Like, I've
Really?
been making music for like 12 years.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Holy shit, this is really good, man." And
Wow.
like, but I haven't really done much with it since. But
As you go through school and your classes and what you're learning, how much of that, while you're learning that, how much of that do you learn through a lens of how you can apply it to your music? I'm just trying to secretly, like, because it's so hard to admit it to yourself, like how much of an idea you have, but I feel like you can kind of catch it in those little ways of like how I'd apply this. Do you find yourself thinking about your music when you're learning all this stuff about, social medias and that? And like, do you find yourself fantasizing about how you would do it if you ever decided to take that leap and really throw yourself out there? If that even question makes sense.
Yeah. I like a lot of the professors in that like are great. Like a lot of the students are SJWs, but the professors are fantastic. And I took intro to visual communication, and we had to make an advertisement for something. So we made like a happiness app for students that like would just give you like a little piece of like happy news every day.
Yeah.
which kind of wasn't the best idea, but at the time we didn't really want to like shoot down the person who made the idea because
fair enough.
Felt
been
rude.
There. Group projects,
but
we've all been there.
Yeah. So I took on all the editing, didn't know how to edit. So it took me about 8 to 11 hours to do all of the editing for the video. I did all of the music, and I was there helping shoot and everything as well for all the video. And the professor at the end of the semester, when I talked to him, because him and I just like a lot of the same movies and stuff, and we were chatting, and then just out of nowhere, dude, he's like, Cole, I'm sure you're going to do so much with your life. I expect so much from you. You're just like, you're so talented. I'm sure you're going to do amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because I had friends behind me and they were like, did you like tell him you were going to kill yourself or something? Like, why is he bigging you up so much?
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't ask for it,
Yeah.
So,
and it's amazing how far that goes too, just having somebody say that stuff, like, which is something that I've recognized. And I am, not to toot my own horn, but I love to be that person. All my friends, I believe in them so much. I tell them all the time. I think one of my biggest skills is to see in people their greatest potential. And even when they don't see it themselves, of just believing in them and saying, like, if you want to, you don't have to do it, right? Like, of course, like when I use this example all the time of my best friend, Chase, right? Like me and him met in university. We are just the same person in two different bodies. Like our humor matches up so well. And he's so kind and is so, amazing in all the ways that I really value myself, like humor and intellect and caring and being a good person. That really deep down, he has all those same traits. And I see so much of what I believe in myself in him. And he's a huge golfer. He's an assistant pro. He just went through, he did his playability test last year and he's going through it and he loves golf and he's found this thing that he's really passionate about. And like, I just keep telling him, like, well, what do you want to, like, if you wanted to start like a training course or like a little like pro shop that you did like swing training and stuff, like you could do that. Or if you want to do like full round training sessions with people, you could do that. Like, I just believe in him so much. And I think he's kind of annoyed with me of like, fuck off, dude. Like, I'll figure it out kind of thing. But I see everything they could ever want to do. And I believe in them so much. Right. And I'd have that with all my friends, but I'm always, where I was trying to get with that is just, even though it's kind of awkward sometimes, especially as men to other men, to be that vulnerable and to tell people, hey man, I love you and I believe in you. And I think you can do this, but it's so important. We need to do it. And I find it so much easier to do with girls. Girls are so much better receptive of it. They react way better when you do this. But all my friends, I'm sure most of my friends have gotten some sort of really long-winded, very in-depth compliment from me of something, right? Like that's what I do. And I feel like because I recognize the value of people doing that for me, and I've needed that at some points, and just randomly the universe will bring that person. It might be a professor. It might be someone that just tells you what you need to hear in that moment. And if you can try and operate so that you can be that person in all these people's lives, if you can be that person for 100 people or 1,000 people, right? And that's expanding that to this of trying to talk to every person that listens to this, like I'm that person. I believe in you that much, whatever that thing is. Is it music? Is it golf? Is it this? Like, you can do it. You just need to push yourself, and I'll be there to support you, right? Like, reach out on the podcast and tell me, hey, you know what? Like, you have this dream of podcast. I have this dream of being the best, cake maker, whatever it is, right? Fuck yeah, I believe in that and I support you and I'll be behind you the whole way. And if you want to come on the podcast and talk about baking cakes, come on, because if you want to just believe in yourself, like I believe in me and like I will believe in you, let's fucking go. Let's ride together. That's what podcasts are. It's just raising people up and it helps everybody. If you're going to become the best cake baker, people are going to want to hear about the best cake maker. That benefits me, right? Like, we can all rise together. It's the Joe Rogan model. A rising tide raises all boats. This doesn't have to be a competition. You can help people. You can use your platform to bring the things that you love and to expand them out into the world and bring them to more people. Like, that's what I love. That's what gets me so excited about this medium and makes, the fact that I know I'm going to have to go through some shit and struggle and make some very little money and be probably broke for a bit, chasing it. That's all worth it, because at the end, it's worth so much more than the money. It's worth so much just to have that, to be able to do that for people and the people that you care about. Right. And to know that in a couple of years' times, if Chase wants to, chase that dream of whatever it is in golf, hopefully I'll have built up a platform that I can help him springboard on that, because I believe in him and to help him, right? Like, that's what gets me excited. I love that stuff. And it's hard to explain that to people, and people just look at you like, what are you doing, man? You have this fucking amazing job that people would kill to have, and you're willing to throw it all away to chase some dream that's going to make no money. And I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, I'm so sure of it. And I'm so confident in it, but like, still it's tough to hear sometimes. It's just the people that you'd hope will be able to understand that and believe in you and it comes from a place of love. They're just worried about you and they want you to be okay. But it's like, just trust me. I'll show you. Just come along for the ride. You'll see. It might take some time, but you'll see eventually, kind of thing. And I feel like that's where Jordan Peterson has a lot more of that too, as as much of it's coached in understanding and showing where these things come from, to allow you to forgive yourself with why you are the certain way that you are. But also there's a good healthy dose of, but still, you got to go out and get some. You got to it's on you. It's about what it's the effort, that piece that you said you're missing for so long. That is so crucial. And that's so animating to everything that else that Jordan Peterson's showing, is like, that's what you still need to do. At the end of the day, it all comes down to effort. And that's, I think that is really scary for people. People don't want to realize that of effort. I don't want to realize that, right? Like, cause I'm worried about, I know I'm lazy at heart, and I have to really work to have a work ethic, right? Like, it does not come natural to me. I'm an artist. Like I'm very, I want to just sit and think about the universe and how things work. And I don't want to do all this stuff, but I know that that's not how, that doesn't put food on the table. And that's a privilege to be able to live that life. And you need to work really hard to get to the point where people respect you and they want to listen, right? Like, if you think, Socrates or all these people, at just a young age, just at, 15, just thought, well, my brain is so amazing, I don't need to even work. People are just going to come to hear what I thought. Fuck you. Yeah. You're in for a rude awakening, right? You have to work your ass off to get to a point where people are going to want to listen to what you hear, or want to listen to what you have to say, but you have to earn that. And then, it doesn't mean that, but that's a tough thing. You have to earn it, but you also have to have that belief in yourself that you had it the whole time. It's a weird little conundrum of like, I need to, at the same time, believe that I have something to say and that people are going to be benefited by listening to me. But at the same time, you don't owe me shit, and nobody deserves, I don't deserve to have any listeners. I have to work for each and every one of them. And to hold that weird juxtaposition in your mind at all times of just the in and the out, the yin and the yang. And so many things have these two opposite sides to them. That's the dualism is very evident in a ton of things in life, right? It's a hard thing to learn, and an even harder thing to, even once you learn it, to enact it and bring it forward into the world. It's tough. It's really tough, but so worth it. So worth it at the end of the day. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I was curious, cause you also smoke weed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever have moments where you have all these things you want to do? You're like, I want to read books. I want to maybe play video games, but you smoke weed and you just don't do anything.
I have the instinct to do that, very much so. And I know that in me, and I'm very much that way. So I put certain things in place of, if I am going to smoke weed, I make sure that I have everything done. All the work I have to do, it has to be at the very end of the day. And I can't have anything. I have to have all my laundry done. Like, if I'm going to smoke, that means I'm checked out for the day. Like, I'm going to bed. I'm going to, watch some videos or do something, or play some guitar, but I have everything turned off, because nothing I hate more is that once I do smoke, I am that, I'm getting in my head, I'm going up here, and I'm not going to be as available for the world, right? Because that's what slows everything down. I can actually think about things and ask myself and question, why am I doing this? Like, am I putting in enough work at work, right? Am I being lazy in any sort of part of my life? But it really takes me out of the real world. So I have certain rules to make sure that I'm always doing this stuff, right? And I know, like, I won't drive if I smoke. I won't do this. And
of course,
right? Yeah. But it's not even. I'm very sure I could drive and be exactly fine. I'm not worried about the actual danger of doing it and driving. What I'm worried about is, once I've done it once, and I know I can, and it was very easy, which I know it will be, and I know that in the back of my head, if ever there's an emergency, it's not like, if I've had 8 beers or something, like, if my I'm trying to think of an emergency. Say, you've had 8 beers, and then your girlfriend's out curling or something, right? And she falls and cracks her head. I'm gonna have to call a cab to get to that fucking hospital, right? Or I'm gonna have to figure something out, because I've had 8 beers. I'm half fucking cut. I'm not gonna go drive, right? I know that if I'd smoked and I will snap out of it like that, like, fucking, I will be ready to go, and I know I can, and I would get there to do whatever I had to do. But even still, I will not do it once, so that I know I have that, because I know myself. And once I do it once, then why not? And I just keep, because I know myself with my self-control, it's not great. So I engineer my life to make it so I don't have to have self-control. I'm very bad with my food, right? My weight issue has been something I've struggled with for a long time. But I found, if I do time restricted eating, where if I just don't eat breakfast, I just, water and work out and all that stuff till 2-3 in the afternoon. Then I have one good meal. I go to Freshie every day, and I get one of like 4 bowls that have like vegetables and all this stuff. And I know I'm getting at least one decent, like, nutrient pack meal at the very start and then I'm full from that, I can only do so much damage. By the time that wears off, say I eat at 3:30, I'm probably not going to be hungry till like 8. I'm going to bed. Like I'll maybe have like one meal and then I can kind of limit the damage I can do. Right. Like, and it's things like that of just knowing myself and trying to articulate ways around to balance it out, because I know myself and I know I can't give it. I'm so lazy to the core. That is who I am. And I need to really fight against that. And it's working against that all the time, that I just know that about myself and take certain actions so that I don't allow that piece of me that doesn't serve me to shine forth too bright. If that makes any sense. That might've been way too fucking inside baseball of my own head,
but to extend it, do you ever have that feeling where you have all this stuff you want to do, but you just don't want to, but you haven't smoked weed?
Like, I know, like it's like, say
you're stoked to read a book or something, and then you get home and instead you just kind of chill on your phone looking through social media instead of doing the thing you actually want to do and being totally content with it. Right. Because I've just been having that problem lately, and holy crap, it's just depressing because you can't feel like you can enjoy anything.
Yeah. And I do have that. And I'd say that is definitely with my mental health of how I'm doing. It depends what's going on in my life. What am I running away from? Right. Like, am I at every point of looking at that, you have to look at why are you doing these things, right? And like, how are you using it? The way I've actually last October, I did this optimized October where I just lived my life as if I'm going to do everything. Like I wanted to read every day. I wanted to work out. I wanted to stretch. I wanted to do this. I wanted to be, no alcohol, no weed, no nothing, just completely. And what that did, what I found the best thing that gave out of me was just, it really highlighted the relationships you have with everything. And you have relationships with people, but also with weed. You have a relationship with alcohol. You have a relationship with food. You have a relationship with all these things. And you have to find ways to work with those relationships and put work into them to find ways that you make them only serve you and minimize the ways that they don't serve you. And that was a big highlight. And what that highlighted to me is so much of, sometimes specifically with weed, it serves me, sometimes it doesn't, right? Alcohol is a little bit more, because alcohol doesn't have as big a draw. I don't enjoy it as much. I really enjoy it in the moment, but I'm such a baby and I hate pain that hangovers are so bad that it kind of balances that out. So it doesn't have a huge draw. I'll do it every once in a while, but it's not that thing. But knowing that I have that about weed, then I can start recognizing myself. When is it pulling me where I know I need to do laundry and I need to do all this stuff, but instead I just smoke and go on my phone or whatever that is. Okay, where was I mentally? Was that healthy, or is that just me trying to hide from things, right? Am I running away? And that's the line that I delineate a problem versus something that I enjoy, right? And I'm always looking at that balance. And I find the nice thing about weed is that as soon as I smoke it, I'm instantly questioning, should I, am I doing this? What are you running away from, right? Because it brings up all those anxieties, which I love because it really keeps me focused and looking at what I want to do, and just really holds me accountable in the same way that the podcast really holds me accountable for things. I find it does too, of just where am I failing and what I need to be doing. But the biggest thing that I found is just when I am finding that I'm using it inappropriately, it's because I'm very, very unhappy in some other way, right? Like it's the days where I come home from work and I literally am so depressed. I literally will lay on the carpet face down with my face in the carpet just to like fucking, because that's all I can do at that point, right? Like and this is new to me. I've never had depression like this until like the last 2 years, and it's 100% due to work and a couple other things and not being able to, and I know that. But when I recognize that in myself, I know that I'm treating myself, and this is not a health. At that point, I do not like my relationship with weed at that point when that's what it's covering up. I don't want to have to smoke weed. I would rather address the things that are making me feel that depressed than just cover it up, which I know I can, but I'd rather have an amazing life that I'm so happy that I don't need to smoke weed, but I'm doing it on top of that because I deserve it and I've worked hard and this is a fun thing, right? It's not escaping away from it. And I think a lot about that. And I'm very critical of myself and my relationship with that because I think that's my number one thing. And I know I have an addictive personality. I've been addicted to shit all the time, right? Like sex, 100% been a sex addict my whole life. Like I'm very confident that, but I've doing the exact same thing I just described with weed is I've done that with sex too. When is this serving me? When am I hurting people? What I'm getting out of this, is it worth it for the trade-off of who's getting hurt or what it's taking out of my life, right? Same thing with weed, same thing with alcohol, same thing with all these things, but it all comes back to what can I fix in my life that is not going to make me turn to all these things? You know what I mean? Like I've had this idea of what drugs were because I was so anti-drug my whole life, right? Like I hated weed growing up. I hated everything, like even when I went to university, I didn't smoke. And then I came back from university and cocaine had taken over my whole hometown. So then I hated cocaine. I hated all these drugs. I just had this real, really unnatural or abnormal reaction to this whole classification of these wildly different things, right? But then at a certain point, I recognized, I think it was maybe Dr. Carl Hart coming on Joe Rogan all the time, and the way he talked about drugs and the relationship, and just that all these drugs do different things, and they're not evil. None of them are evil. They're all just certain things that have different effects on the body, and it reacts to everybody differently. And sure, some of them can be dealt as an escape, but so can food, so can caffeine, so can all of these things, right? Can be it's just changes of your physical state that make you feel better. And that can be good or that can be bad, but it all comes back to your relationship with it. Right now, I've come to a point where I don't just hate like, I don't think I'll ever do cocaine. It just doesn't have a pull for me. Like, there's some drugs that I would love to try, right? Like, I really want to try mushrooms. I really want to, in the right environment, try MDMA. There's certain things I do want to do, but I'm also such a coward that I know, and I've listened to, for all the drugs that I want to do, I've at least listened to probably minimum 30, but probably hundreds of hours of people talking about them on podcasts and what it is and the positives and the negatives. And I'm really thinking these things through because I want to be able to go into it understanding the relationship instead of just, being 10 years down the road into a relationship with liquor without ever looking at that relationship. I'd rather go into it before and really understand what I'm getting myself into and decide consciously if that's worth it to me, because I feel like that's the healthy way. And I feel like that's the next level. I think for so long, we just thought that, abstinence was the only combat to these issues, but it's not. It's about understanding and leaving it okay to talk about these things and what do you get out of them and be able to have discussion about them, because that's the real issue. It's if it serves you or not. Crack isn't evil. It's what you're escaping from it and what it does to your life. If you can't handle it responsibly and you can't be open about it and you can't, and same with all these drugs, like, and there's huge benefits. Like when you look at psilocybin and depression and psilocybin and PTSD, MDMA and PTSD, ketamine, like these drugs are absolutely amazing in what they can do when paired the right way, like paired with talk therapy or paired with all these things, and they can have these amazing effects, but we don't even talk about them because we're so shut down to the whole idea in itself. And that's something I'm really excited about. I mean, I've never talked about, this is the first time I talk about smoking weed on the podcast, I think. Like maybe it's come up any other time, but it's because there's such a stigma about it. Everyone just has this idea. My parents do, like fucking everybody does. Of just, if you smoke weed, you are the fucking loser. You're the devil. And that's what I'm telling me. Fuck, I'm running a huge company. I'm fucking doing this podcast. I'm doing all this stuff. I have great relationships. I'm very kind. I love people. Like, really? That's what you think? Like, that's fine. But I'm going to go out and I'm going to change the perception, because that's not what it is. Right. And I'll be the first to admit it, that you can abuse any of these things. For sure you can. I'll be right on board. I'm the first one to say it. I've done it myself. I have perfect examples, but that doesn't mean it's all bad. Right. Like, fuck, I don't know. Sorry to go on a long winded thing. That's the first, I had to get a lot out there because it's the first time I've ever really talked about it. And there's, and there's also work and, going into those types of things and how people look at you and just knowing this idea of what it is. But you know what, I'm so far past that. And I'm so fucking far past caring about what other people think at this point, and just want to, be fully me. And that's another thing too, of just talking all this shit about being fully transparent and honest and genuine on the podcast. And then to have that big piece of my life just not even be able to talk about it and have to keep it hidden because of what other people think. Fuck, does that make me sick to my stomach? And that's been haunting for the last year and a half. And it's probably part of the reason my mental health has been deteriorating, of just feeling like this dishonesty of it and this thing that I'm carrying all this guilt over, when I don't think it's something that should be guilty over. Like, fuck society for making me feel guilty over something that has absolutely changed my life and has made me into this person that I've done all this work on myself for the last couple of years. That's a huge piece of it. It's not 100%, right? Like, you can't just put it all into that, but it was definitely a tool that really helped me and changed who I was, and could probably help a lot of other people, but they're staying away from it because they're so worried about the stigma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely is like a serious issue, right?
It is. Yeah. And that's something that I found just lately, of talking to other people that are in a similar situation where, weed is a big part of their life, but they're talking about, like just how it affects them and how they can't talk about it and how like interesting it is and how universal it is. I thought I was kind of the only one sitting here struggling with that as a thing, but you know what? So many people do. And the confidence that I have that if given the full opportunity to, do a whole podcast on it and to really talk about the relationship and what it is for me, that all those naysayers and all those people, if they would give me the time to listen to it, they would come around and they would understand. But just the fact that I would have to do that hurts my feelings, because I feel like I've already proved it enough to people, especially the people close to me, that you can trust me. And I'm not all those things that you associate weed with and all the negative, that I'm not that. In that, yeah, you might have 40 years of programming, and I have a ton of compassion for that. I don't blame them for that. Like, obviously there's been a lot of witch hunts and campaigns to make people feel that way. But you think of all people, if it's me, right? One way I can put this is, so when I had Elias Isidoro, I might have just said his name wrong. Apologies if I did. From the Peterson Pals group on, he does the free speech group at UVic and stuff. When I had him on the podcast, somebody, pretty close to me, like with someone that I know well and I would expect more of, on the post commented all these articles going against the Free Speech Club and Angelo himself and stuff. So I click into these articles, right? Because I'm always open. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I missed something, right? And all the articles are just saying there was no actual attacks on anything that Angelo had said or anything that the Free Speech Club did. They just were attacking them for platforming, right? Because they had brought Jordan Peterson to the university to speak. They brought Ben Shapiro, right? And they're just talking about all this. So I was like, man, like, you're attacking me for somebody, like, but there's no meat to this argument. Like, you're trying to insinuate that I just had this bad person on my podcast, so that we just had a really good conversation, not a lick of hate, right? Like, I am every podcast, I'm preaching love and compassion, right? There was not a lick of hate in it. And I get that, right? Like, I totally get that within your ecosphere, that's what you're supposed to do, right? Oh, he's a bag, he's on the bad team. Here's some articles, right? And that's what I said to him. I just said, you know what? First of all, there's no real bad stuff in there. I'd read those articles. They're all fluff. They're all circular. They don't actually attack anything. They didn't address any of the ideas that they're saying are bad. They didn't say why they're bad. They just said these people have bad ideas and they platform them, right? There was not an actual argument made. It was all circular. It was all fluff, first of all. But second of all, if this guy was bad and he was hateful and he had a bad message to spread, you know me so much, and that I'm not that person, that I'm very much the opposite of that. Wouldn't you want that person, if that is that person in the world? Is there any better show for them to come on than mine? Because I'm going to stand up for that. And if they say something truly hateful, I would be the first one to say, not a chance. Like, go fuck yourself. That is so wrong. And I would do it in the right way. And I'd be the person to help bring them more towards the center. Wouldn't you be happy that, like, whoever you think is the worst person, maybe that's Ben Shapiro. If you think Ben Shapiro's the devil, wouldn't you want Ben Shapiro to come on my show and have me test his ideas to show that if he's bad, it'll come out in the wash? And that's what, same thing with the weed. Like, if it was that bad, can you not just trust in who I am and let that shine through over the other, and not even to give me a free pass, but just to listen to the conversation, listen to what I have to say on the subject, and then make your decisions. But to just react without listening, without doing anything, or without actually taking my side of it, and just to have this full story built up in your head, it's like, man, that's just so insulting to me. Of like, I thought I would have done enough groundwork that you'd give me at least some space to make my case on it, instead of just putting me in a box.
And that was what happened with my friend. Like, he knew that I'd been following JP for 5-6 years. Yeah. The fact that he didn't trust me, that I wasn't the things that he thinks, really, really fucking hurt.
Right. It does. And and
he was like, literally, dude, he was like hugging me like I was in a cult. And he was like, you're going to get through this, bro. You're going to get through this. Yeah. While at the same time acknowledging that he had never read a JP book, watched a video, or anything. He had only seen hit pieces on him. And I was like, well, if you're honestly like, you literally have no place to argue this then. Like,
I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? It does.
It was like, he's not a god call. And I was like, I've never fucking said he is. Like, that's never been what I've said ever. He says dumb shit like I say dumb shit. We all say dumb shit,
Exactly. And he's the first one to say it. Fuck, I'm not perfect. I have issues, right? Like, and that's all the people that I love the most are the first person to say, like, fuck yeah, I got issues, right? Like, I'm bad at this. I'm bad at this. I need to work on this, right? But it's the people that are so higher than thou and holier than thou and that stuff where the real issues come out. I don't know. It's definitely interesting at the very least to try and navigate it all and trying to keep your sanity within it all. And that's where I see a thing like the Peterson Pals group is such a lighthouse in the dark for that, of just, it is so tough to navigate this all and to keep your sense of sanity, and to have just any form of, oh, I'm not alone, people, and to just to see logic reign and to see compassion reign. Like, it's such a breath of fresh air that I feel like I wonder at the same time, I worry about people that don't have that. And I wonder how you can spread that and how you can make that bigger, right? Like that's great that the couple hundred people that are in that group have that, but how do you spread that to thousands of people? How do you make sure that there's that on every campus in Canada? How do you make sure that there's that in every, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I've been thinking that. I've been like, in my head, I was like, I really hope that there are just other communities like this that we just don't.
And I'm sure there are. I'm sure that there has to be. I just
really hope there has to be.
Yeah.
Because like, if we're the only ones, like, I mean, I'm certainly very happy that we have it, but
me too. Yeah.
Just like you said, like it would be nice to know it's out there on a grander scale for the people that need it.
Yeah. And that's kind of, what I'm hoping here too, is like, maybe people hear, a couple episodes of the Peterson Pal on it here and maybe go to check out the group. Right. And they find that one, or maybe people listen to it and like, man, this Peterson Pal group sure sounds like the stoicism group that I've been a part of for 2 years. That is very much the same and kind of brings these same things in, right? Like it doesn't have to be Jordan Peterson. It doesn't have to be any of these things. It's just,
yeah, it's true. You're right.
And maybe we can start, and, maybe as they start to bubble and grow, they start to cross pollinate. And then we, like you say, there must be these groups elsewhere that we just aren't aware of. And maybe they start to, to cross over, and we start doing a Peterson Pals group plus this random stoicism group that's been operating for 2 years. And you start to see the people from around the world that are in there, and then it grows from there, and maybe it gives a bit more power. And then that's how everything grows. It grows from the bottom. It starts at the grassroots and it grows into this big forest, but it's got to start somewhere. And the fact that we found ours, we can be thankful for that, but also doesn't mean that we can stop working to keep spreading it and to help find other ones and help other people that maybe are struggling without it to find peace and to find that. Because, and then on the other side of it too, is if you think completely the opposite of us, Cole, there's probably some groups online that, you can go into that completely feed the exact opposite, where all the woke stuff and that, and just, the completely externalized issues of it. Nothing is ever your fault. It's always the patriarchy. It's always sexism. It's always racism. It's always all these things. Nothing is your fault. We're all here for you. There's probably 1,000 of those groups too. And they're probably, unfortunately, not unfortunately, it's all a matter of viewpoint, but they're probably getting the same things out of that group that the Peterson Pals get out of this one, right? It's just about how does it serve you in the grand scheme of things. And I think the skills and the lessons that people are coming out of this group and the betterment that they're getting is kind of antithetical just based on a thing, because they're saying, no, this is your fault. And unfortunately you got to do something and you've got to work at it. It's not, nothing's your fault, right? That's the two opposite sides of the poles of, it's a shitty place to live where nothing's your fault because you're going to stay stunted and you're not going to grow. And it's a terrible place to live where everything's your fault and nothing's a matter of circumstance, because it's just painful. Right. But if you go just in from those 2 points, you're going to be a lot better off. Right. And then also I think between the two of them, the more further you get over to taking accountability, the better off your life is going to become. The more, even if it's really tough, your house just burnt down and your old lady left you and all this stuff. And it seems like it's not your fault, but it's going to be so painful to do it. But if you find the little pieces of that are your fault, even if none of it's your fault, if it was a complete accident, right? If you can find the pieces that you can act upon, the realization and the manifestation of where that's going to take you is going to be so much better off the next couple steps you get to, as long as you're always taking maximum accountability, right? Even if you got to invent it, even if it was some act of God flood thing, that if you can find any piece of that to bring accountability back in and find,
because you're right, it brings you a point where you can start those small steps that we were talking about.
Exactly.
Right? It at least gets you that first step where you're like, okay, I know what I can do from here to move forward.
Exactly.
And honestly, like this group, I mean, I've said it to Alex before, but like the amount of people I've become really good friends with and everything in here, this is the happiest I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I mean, I've been like addicted to drugs and all kinds of shit and been alone for most of my life. But,
fair point. Like, right. But
I would have never, ever imagined I could be this happy.
Yeah. And that makes, that almost gives me goosebumps. Right? Like just to hear that. But again, that's what makes it so hurtful to hear, like a friend to say, like to treat it like it's a cult and to treat it without.
I think that's why I got so angry.
For sure. Like, and that's natural, right?
Like, and not only that, I was like, bro, this is like 70% me. Like I post so much, like you're literally calling out me.
Yeah.
That's who you're shitting on,
So I think we've covered most things, but I think that's maybe a cool place to end off, because I want to ask about that, of those leaderboards on the Peterson Pals group. That's always something, because I'm the complete opposite. I'm more of a lurker. I don't look at all the posts. I'm very in and out. Like I usually skim. And if there's a big topic where if somebody's, my favorite are the debate ones where people, like, what do you think on monogamy or what do you think on abortion? Right. Like I like jumping into those to see what people are going, but some of the mean stuff and some of the, the manifestations of the frustration of being stuck in the university against the left, right. I'm outside of that. So I have a little bit less, time for those types of stuff. And I try to look for the really high level intellectual stuff of it. So I don't post much. If you want to look at the leaderboards of like who posts the most, I'm probably, hundreds down, but I'm curious for somebody that is more active in it. At what point do those leaderboards help? Do they hurt? Is it just a fun thing? I'm curious. And just to explain to people every once in a while, I don't know if it's Alex that does it or there's some sort of metrics in Facebook groups that show, how many comments, likes. I don't really know what all goes into it, but it's just like activity within the group. And then it shows like the top 10 people that are most active. And without those, we would know, right? Because you can tell of who's always commenting, who's helping out. And there's a lot of them have been on the show. I mean, Ethan's one of those guys, one of the first Peterson, maybe the first one I had on. Elijah's always up there. Yourself, you're always up there, right? And those are the people that make the group and that keep the discussion going, because that's what allows people like me to hop in when I can. Because if you guys weren't creating those posts and starting those discussions, I wouldn't be able to hop in and learn and get other perspectives and to help other people learn. When I see people really make a good argument that's just missing one lens on it, that they're just like they're really confident in what they're saying, but they're just missing this one piece, and just to go in like, hey, you're right on the money there, but then also look at it this way and don't forget this. Now add that. Now you got a really strong argument there. I love that, right? Like just helping people out in that way and having people do that for me too, of just me laying out exactly what I think on this piece, and I'm just missing one little thing that really ties it all together. That's what you need, and that's what that group creates. It's fun. So I'm curious to you, just I don't know if there's a question, if there's even a question in there, but just kind of what you think about the amount of activity and what that brings you, and maybe how you enjoy that, and maybe also what are your favorite parts? Because I said like my favorite parts of the group is those really high level discussion kind of parts of it. What's the favorite parts for you of the whole group as a whole, and maybe even some of the activities that it's brought, like the trips and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, like I actually posted something recently, like it was a bunch of homeless spikes underneath the bridge.
Yeah, I saw that one.
And I was just like, I didn't even put my own opinion on it. I just was like, hey, what does everyone think about this? And it was very interesting seeing. And I don't know if you saw the extra question that was on there, but I also asked, not how do you feel about homeless people in general, but how do you feel when you see one on the street? Like, what is your actual feeling when you encounter them or a group of them? Because I feel like that's a very different feeling than what people might have on the whole about homeless people. Yeah. Right. So a lot of those answers were very, very interesting. And I just posted about investing because I was trying to get into investing, and people were posting like freaking like giant things. And I was like, okay, I guess I have a good starting point. Yeah. And it's funny because like 2 days before that, I was like, how the fuck am I going to get into investing? And then I was like, oh, I'll just ask the group. I'm sure someone's going to teach me. Yeah, exactly. And that's that reminded me of something of when I'm saying, like there's this group out there, but then there's probably 1,000 other groups that are on the other side of it. But I think what separates this group versus those groups is, say you posted that same exact post about the homeless spikes under the overpass, and you said, how do you feel about this? If you post that in one of those groups, the reactions, it's going to be 90% the same, right? There's going to be so little dissent. But what I love about this group is whether it's homeless, whether it's abortions, whether it's monogamy, whether you get people that have super well articulated points and really well thought through on all sides of it, pro, against, right, on everything we've put so far. And that's what really shows me, oh, this is not an echo chamber whatsoever. This is the real shit. This is people testing ideas, because you will see every single side of it come out, and not in some weak way either. There's going to be someone that's really well read on this side of the issue. I think the biggest highlight to me that really drove that point home was earlier on in the group when we did those first big abortion talks. I was curious because I went into it thinking, this is probably going to be just everybody's going to be pro-choice, right? And because that's just kind of where I thought, just with all the program, what you see around, it just seems like that's I don't really care much. I'm a guy, it's not my domain to really plant my flag in the ground and have a super strong opinion on it either way. I do anyways, because that's who I am as a person. But I was so blown away by the different takes on it, and the people that had the different takes of like,
just backgrounds I never would have expected to come from. And when they explain the full of how they got to the points that they are, and to add their own personal story of how they arrived at these ideas, and what iterations those ideas had taken. It was so well fleshed out, and just so reinvigorating to me to see, like, oh, there is this type of discussion that I only found it in podcasts, right? And it's only certain people, but it's not just, it felt like it's just this 1% of a 1% of a 1% of people that are in this podcast medium that are having these discussions and stuff. But it seems like no one in the real world actually cares about this stuff or has dissenting opinions. But then to see it, oh no, there's people everywhere that has really well thought out and really good ideas to share. There's just not that many mediums to see them go against each other and to see what comes of it. It's just it's very interesting to me, and just another thing I really appreciate about that group, even if I don't participate as much as I probably should for how much the group has given me, if I'm fair about it. But I just got a lot of shit going on. Yeah.
Well, and certainly my favorite thing has probably been just meeting people. Like, I've met you, and I mean, Alex and another girl, Talia, have become pretty much like my best friends, even though we don't live. And I mean best in the sense of, like, literally are very encouraging. They're always supportive.
Mm-hmm.
They actually seem to, like, care about me, whereas no friends I've had in my life before then seemed like. I have one friend that's kind of like that here, but that's about it, and I think
I think probably a big part of that too is for somebody like you or me that is very not particular, but we have ideas and we feel strongly about them, and some of those ideas are not culturally or societally kosher, maybe. I'm trying to find the right way to put this, but because of that, you always know that there's a societal pressure, right? Like, of, I'm a little bit weird, I know that, right? So I know how to put on this face of, I'm just going to show to the world, or whatever situation I'm in. If I'm at work on one person, if I'm here on one person, but I never really, like I do on the podcast, I think it's the only space I do this, where I let all my weirdness, right? Like, I can talk Legend of Zelda, particle physics into, spirituality, and I can run that gambit. But societally, there'd be a lot of cost to that, unless you've built something like this where you can let it all go. But because of that, it's hard to feel like people truly care about it, because they're only caring about part of you. Like, it's probably some of your friends care about you.
That was the exact issue I had. Like, right? when I was talking with them, I was like, this is the first time I felt like I could actually be myself.
Exactly. Right.
Fully, and I think, and have friends that actually like me for it.
For sure. And I think that is such a common feeling. And I feel like so many people feel that, of just, they're always putting on one face or another. And I feel like some people, either one of two things happen. Either that really pulls on you, and it pulls you into a dark place, and you can go into depression, you can go into addiction. There's a lot of places that can take you, or you can just completely cut yourself off from that and totally take on one of those personas that's clearly not your whole being, but just, I am going to be, I'm a social justice warrior. That is all I am. That is everything. So that now I can become fully accepted within that realm, even though that means cutting off these other pieces of me that I did value. But I'm just going to, it's partial happiness, because you're finding happiness within this one realm, but it's very one-dimensional, right? And that's what I see of the sadness of that, because how can you blame somebody for that when the world is so tough and it's so hard to be understood, and you have this golden ticket in front of you, the Willy Wonka's golden ticket. If I take on this identity, I can feel love, and I can feel community, and I can feel that. How can you blame people for that? That's what I'm saying. That's what I want. I wish the Peterson Pals group understood that more. Of I know we have a lot of contempt for the ideas and the shit that this causes, and that it's actually affecting policy with this fucking ridiculousness. But also the people, the actual people at the bottom that are doing this, how can you blame them for that? Because life is so hard, and that is such an easy thing to do, to take that on, right? And it's existed forever. It's woke is the easiest one right now. It's the easiest. It's the goldness of the golden tickets. But for a long time, that was religion, right? If you just didn't know who you were, you could take on that religion and it would serve you. But that's the thing. When you look at what religion gave you, the positives and the negatives, and you look at what this wokeism stuff gives you, it's not the right value.
And I totally agree with you that you're taking so much away from yourself. Like, literally, I didn't even realize until I started hanging out with, like, Alex and Talia and, like, more people in the group that, like, I had literally cut off so many parts of things that were so big to me.
Yeah.
Like, I used to be a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and I would read all the books and everything.
Yeah.
But because people would, I got friends in high school that were like, oh, that's nerdy. Why the fuck would you do that? So, those sections of my life just kept cutting pieces of myself away. And now
Mhm.
it seems like I'm actually picking them all up and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
and dusting them off and being like, no, this actually feels good to actually be able to talk about these things. I shouldn't have felt so ashamed of myself.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And that's very similar to what I found with this podcast of, I was already doing it in life of kind of just stop caring about it anymore. And, like, I love Twilight, like the books, movies, meh, but the books, loved them, right? Like really enjoyed them. Me and my sister, I had read Aragon. I was really loving the series. I think there's only 2 books out at that point, maybe. And I really wanted my sister to read them because me and my sister were both big readers and we both liked somewhat similar stuff, but it was always really hard for me to get her to take recommendations of mine. So we did a trade. I would read Twilight if she'd read Aragon, and I fucking love Twilight. Like, and people thinking now, if you like fiction fantasy books and you've had whatever stigma around Twilight that has prevented you from read them. They're fucking great books. And maybe it's just because I'm a sensitive cat deep down, but like I really enjoyed them. But yeah, I would never talk about that. But just why? Why not? I really enjoy them. They're great books. Like, fuck, one day I can't wait to have Stephanie Meyer on this podcast and tell her exactly what her books did for me, right? Like, why would I be ashamed of that? Why would I not lean into that? Why would I not do that? And I see that now, but for fucking 25, 26 years, that's exactly what I did, right? Like I was there too. And it doesn't matter when you wake up to that. It's just that once you do wake up to that and recognize it, do you become that person that just says, well, it's too hard to try it, or no, this is going to be painful, but I'm going to try and live a fully rounded, fully experienced life and fuck society or all that be damned, right? I'm just going to be who I am. Right. That's the scariest thing you can do, but it's also the most rewarding thing you can do. And everybody realizes that at a different point. You can realize that when you're fucking 70, right? You hope you wouldn't, but you can. You can never realize it once. You can go through your whole life, live and die, and never understand that. But it's a thing of power if you can.
On the note of vampire books, have you ever read Anne Rice's books?
I don't think I have, no.
Hers are very interesting because it's like the vampires have existed before like mankind. So like literally like or like ancient Mesopotamia basically. So like literally she researches history and like some of them lived through the Renaissance. Like she literally spends all this time doing research. Like one guy literally meets Rembrandt. Like it's so interesting. And a lot of it is the existentialism of living that long.
Yeah.
Watching everyone you care about die around you, trying to hold on to relationships. And it's funny because they actually can't have sex at all. Like once you're a vampire, that's it. Like there's no sexual activity whatsoever. The closest thing to that is like, 2 vampires will bite each other's necks and drink each other's blood. And like when they drink the blood, they actually like experience the person's life.
Almost. Whoa, that's cool.
Like, yeah. So
I'm gonna have to read these books.
And the main character Lestat always seeks the evildoer. Like he doesn't kill just indiscriminately. Like he can read people's minds and he's like, oh, okay, you're murdering people or you're planning to murder someone. You're gonna fucking die tonight.
But then he has to drink their blood and he has to experience all their evil too.
And then and he gets to experience all their evil, right?
Oh, that sounds like a great fucking. You ever just hear what's the word? Like in comedy when you have a new a premise. Thank you. I said thank you, even though I thought of it myself. A premise, right? when you hear a premise that is just so good, and you just like your mind's already racing with all the different implications. Like as you were saying that, I was already like seeing forward, like all the things you eventually described. I was like, oh, I'm already there. I was already like, as soon as I just hear the base premise, is like, oh, that's a wicked premise, and all the places you go with it, my mind just raced. I'm like, I got to read these books.
They did one where his body gets stolen. Like he meets someone, and because like the vampires can actually like astral project, he just astral projects into someone, and that guy astral projects into him, and they do an agreement where he's like, okay, you get to be human for like 6 months, and then we'll change back. But he just takes the body and fucks off. Oh. And then in another book, because Anne Rice is atheist, like literally God comes to him and is like, bro, I need your help like fighting the devil. This is some serious shit. Whoa. And then like it goes through the dichotomy of him meeting the devil, and the devil's like, no, actually God's a piece of shit. You need to understand what's actually going on. And so in that book, like when humans die, there's like this whole like world that's like made up of people's memories. And it's all crumbling because people's memories are faulting, right? And people don't even understand why they're there. It's all confusion and everything is like just horrible and awful. And God won't let anyone into heaven. He's just like, bro, this is my place. Fuck you. Yeah. Like, and the devil is literally just arguing like, hey, shouldn't everyone have some happiness at the end of it all?
Wow.
And like, I just remember, I don't remember much of the book because I read it when I was like 15, but I just remember like he literally has to relive what Jesus went through, or like he's like trailing behind Jesus, and like
Yeah.
God is literally just like, you wouldn't go against me, would you? And it's like, oh my God, it's just so
Wow.
crazy. All this
Fascinating.
stories, like all this shit. Yeah.
And that's why I'm so thankful for my parents at such a young age. They got me into reading, right? I didn't realize this till just a couple of years ago, but and I remembered it once they mentioned it, but when I was very young, I don't know, like 2 or 3, they took cue cards and put words on them, put them all over my walls. And like before bed every night, we'd do reading, like put together sentences and stuff. And then always give me books, and they would read to me and stuff. And I have such a love of reading now. And that was one of those things. My love of reading was something I would hide altogether. Not just the Twilight, not just the Harry Potter, but everything, right? Just unfortunately, and apologies, this is going to trigger some people, but reading was gay where I grew up in Slave Lake, circa fucking 2001, 2002. Reading was gay. I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, and that word is not appropriate, but that's to fully understand what I'm trying to say to people. And there's going to be a lot of people that understand that was the idea. So I hid my love of reading all the time, or I didn't hide it completely. I just conveniently wouldn't bring it up. Like I would never hide these things. Like if people knew that I read, they would ask me about it. Right. And there was people, I had lots of friends too, that also, like one of my best friends growing up, Clinton, like he didn't tell lots of people, but there was a couple of the series that I really liked that I got him on. He read like the Percy Jackson series. That was one of my favorites. Like he read them too. And we would talk about it, but me and Clinton never talked about Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief to like all of our other hockey buddies, and we'd keep that in. So I've never actually hide it all together. I would just conveniently not bring it up, right? I would know, okay, what group am I in? What is going to be okay to talk about? Oh, it's sports now. I can talk about, I love sports too, right? Like, it's not that I need to talk about, like, I love everything. I love science. I love sports. I love all.
Like you were cutting a part of yourself and not being true to yourself.
Yeah. Right? But at that time, I didn't feel like I was cutting it. It's just, that understanding came way later. I didn't even recognize that I was cutting people. I was doing it, right? And you're so right, I was. But at the time, I didn't recognize it's just what are you doing to survive? What are you doing to survive?
Yeah, I was about to say it's adaptation, right?
It's adaptation, right? And then and the realization later of what you were doing to yourself comes way later, right? And that's what it is. But now understanding that the same thing you're talking about, drugs and alcohol and the pitfalls, is I want some 16-year-old kid that's thinking about this stuff to recognize that now. If they can recognize now the pieces of themselves that are cutting off, and it's not to say you won't do that, you're going to have to cut some pieces off of you just to survive, just to get through. But doing that, cutting some piece off of you with the knowledge that, man, like this doesn't feel right. I probably shouldn't be doing this. This is a cheap out. I should probably be more belief in who I am, but just to get through the situation I am. That's a much healthier version than not even understanding that you're doing it all together, right? The first step to fixing something is acknowledging it, right? Like self-awareness of it. And that's what I'm telling people is like, yeah, even though that's a pitfall that you're falling into, you got to fall into it, right? Like sometimes a pitfall is just all the way around. It's miles and miles to get around it. You're going to have to go through it, but it's a much different thing to see, fuck, I'm coming out of this pitfall. I'm gonna have to climb down. It's going to be sketchy. I'm going to have to get up the other side instead of just jogging along and you go right into that bitch, right? That is a very different thing, right? Of understanding it. And that's what I'm saying, the self-awareness of it, just to give that message to these. And that's not just 16-year-olds, that's 19-year-olds, right? Like one of my best, a family friend, he listens to this podcast a lot, and he's 19 years old. And when I was out in BC at my sister's wedding, we went drinking a couple nights, and just to listen to the angst and the anxiety of a 19-year-old kid, of just exactly what we're talking about, of just not knowing what am I going to do? Who am I? What am I going to accomplish? And just to hear all that was so almost like cute and reassuring. I was just like, there's no way you can know. You're 19. You don't know shit. And just understand that of just the next couple of years, just enjoy the fuck out of them. And you're going to find some realizations. And in a couple of years, you can start asking these questions. But right now you're asking questions that you should be asking in a couple of years. Just enjoy it. But it's just so funny to go back and to see somebody that you can just see yourself in. Like I was seeing myself when he was talking, I was seeing myself at 19 because I was doing the same thing, and so much anxiety over what am I doing? Am I doing the right choice? Should I go to school? School's bullshit, but I still kind of got to do it, right? Like, and all this stuff and whatever it do. But just at every level, it's just the acknowledgement and the self-awareness and the realization gets you so much farther than you would just to wander blindly through it and not ask these questions and just be whoever people need to be, right? To become that yes man, to become, just take in whatever identity you need to get you through. If you're doing that without acknowledgement, that is a very slippery path that'll you'll end up 10 years down the road doing something you hate with people you hate, and you'll wake up to it and you'll be really upset that day. But the quicker you can do that, the quicker you can realize that, the less of a culture shock that's going to be when you do finally wake up to the fact that maybe I have been living a path that's been set out for me. It's not something that I chose to go down, which I think is also a very natural thing that people will experience.
And the younger you learn that, the less you're going to throw those things away from you. You'll cut them off, but you'll still keep them close.
Exactly. And you won't, it's easy when you're not acknowledging it to just believe the bullshit and just to say, you know what? No, reading is gay. I don't read. I'm not a reader, right? Because that's what you see with so many people. But to have that, and I always had that of, you know what? This just isn't applicable right now. But there's no way I'm giving up my Legend of Zelda, my Twilight, my Lord of the Rings, my Harry Potter, or my Star Wars, right? Like, I love all that stuff, and I feel like if somebody gives me and there was always people along the way where you can experience those things with, where you would have those conversations and you'd get a lot from them. But just to say, you know what, I believe in myself enough that all those weird things together, I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of who that makes me, and I want to share that with everybody. I hope that if that can give people the confidence to start doing that in their little ways, and probably not all at once, but just to let more and more of themselves through, to pick up all those pieces they cut off and just start reattaching them little by little and bringing them out more and more. That's my goal at the end of the day. That's what I hope to do with this podcast, is just to show people that, because it's such a fulfilling experience to be able to do it and just to be more.
And when you find people that actually like, and then you, like we were saying, then you find people that like you for who you are, not who you want people to perceive you to be. Right.
And if you never be who you are, you'll never know if you're being loved for who you are, because you're not being who you are. You know what I mean? Like, that sounds like almost a fucking tongue twister, but if you're always cutting these pieces off and you're never showing your fully articulated self, it doesn't matter how much love you have. You're always going to be questioning, well, do they love, if I showed them the full me, would they still love me? Warts and all, right? The good and the bad, would they still love me? And I feel like that is so much of that question that animates so much of life. And for so many people, is just that question itself. And the first step to knowing that is, well, do you know who you are? Do you love you? Right? Like, it's kind of hard to ask other people too, unless you've asked yourself those questions. So, I mean, that's the first place to start. And that's what I tell everybody. And that's what I told him, is just, work on yourself. Like, you don't need to have it all figured out. Just, are you proud of who you are? Right? Like, and the kid in question, he's an awesome young kid. And this is the thing, for 19 years old, he has so much of this shit figured out. And he's saying, and that's the issue is, and same with me, he's so far ahead of where he is that he's seeing all the issues of the world and all the bullshit and how the games and all that, he's seeing it out ahead. Like I was, right? When I went to university, I was seeing the bullshit that university was, and everyone else is just eating it up like this. And I'm like, this seems like bullshit, right? So then you have all that angst, but it's also like, yeah, that's a bit of it's a gift and a curse, right? You're 19 years old and you're seeing the evils of the world, right? And the bullshit, but that's also a gift, because now you can at least work your way through it. But don't get caught up in having to fix it all right now, because you're 19. There's nothing you can do about it. Just enjoy it. Make it exactly what you can make it. Enjoy the fuck of it. Have fun. Make some mistakes. Fuck around. Find out who you are. Find those things. Like, just without any of that societal bullshit. And that's what I really loved about university, and specifically Lister Hall, which is the residence there, was you could be whatever you wanted. And that was the first experience I got to be. I can be everything. Oh man, like I can, oh, reading isn't gay here. Oh, we can talk about this stuff, right? Like, and I sort of keep throwing that out because I'm sure that triggers people every time I say that. But I mean, the actual verbiage of saying it that way is very important to what the actual method of what it was, right? To see that and to be able to experience that was amazing. But then also to lose that after 4 years and have to go move back to Slave Lake, and now you don't have that safe environment to do it. Now, all those skills I learned about believing myself and loving who I am when I'm fully articulated like that, and then having to now go in the real world and gain back that confidence to bring that Lister self, like Lister Nick, who I was then, out to the world, and the real world is a very different, it's a very different take. And it's a weird little path that I never would have saw coming, but it's been pretty fun. It's been pretty fun. Yeah.
At least you're getting there, right?
I'm getting there, right? And there's a long way to go, but I'm working on it. And that's what feels so good, is actually to be able to make progress and to be able to see it myself and to look back on myself like a year ago and see where I was. And it's like, man, I've come so far in every year, and I'm so proud of that. Whereas, it's still embarrassing to look back at yourself at 22, 23 and be like, oh my God, that poor kid, like, what was he thinking? But to see how far you've come and to have so much love for that and compassion for that is an awesome experience. And I would recommend to anybody to start doing that work, start asking yourself the tough questions. But I think we're over 3 hours at this point. We've been just crushing it, right? We've been going. Anything else we missed that we didn't talk about? Anything that you thought we talked about that you wanted to, or do you think we covered the whole gambit today?
I'm sure we'll do another one.
Oh, I'm very sure we will. And next
We
next
can
time,
always leave more for next time,
yes,
right?
yes, sir. And we'll maybe do the next one in person because yeah, like I said, I told you before some of the big things coming, so we'll probably have to talk after this of what the next steps are and where we're going. But I'm so excited for that, and I have so much belief in where it's going, and so much fear and so much anxiety and so much all that too. I'm not gonna lie, it's scary as shit, but I'm so excited for it. So can't wait to let everyone else know more about that. Can't say thank you enough for coming on, Cole. I really enjoyed that conversation. I knew we would, but even though you're going to enjoy it, it still doesn't take any of the specialness away when it comes on and you have
You're right. The nervousness went away.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I know it will, and that's why I don't even get caught up in it, because I know as soon as you get into that first meaty topic, and just there's no time for nervousness when you're firing your brain, you're actually thinking about these tough subjects and trying to articulate it. That takes the place of it. That takes so much mental capacity. You just don't have room to be nervous, right? And that's what I love about it. That's what's so much fun. And people, I'm hoping that as this show progresses, people get that. And I hope that people get less nervous coming in, but I think it's just a human nature thing. I think everybody's going to be nervous. But then what's so exciting is now the next time you'll probably still be nervous, but then maybe the time after that, then you'll come in right off the bat and you won't be nervous. Cause I think it probably takes a few shots. I still get nervous for this every time. So I'm not even there yet, but like I said, thank you so much, Cole. Thanks for all you do with the group. Thanks for, like I said, helping me out getting the YouTube channel caught up. Can't even articulate how much that meant to me and how awesome that's been and how great that makes me feel to have that back caught up and what that allows for all the next steps of the clips and all that. Now that we're caught up, like we talked about, I'm so excited for those next steps and what we can do. And thank you genuinely for that. And thank you for the conversation. And I can't wait to do it again.
Thank you, Nick. I'm glad to help you with everything.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, I will talk to you soon. All right. See you, dude.
All right. See ya.
All right. What did you guys think of that one? Please let me know, especially now that I'm starting to take this full time and I need to start monetizing it. I really need to hear what parts you like, what parts you don't like. Trying to maybe think up a way of leaving an anonymous way to leave these things. I know that's kind of a risky venture because you never know what you're going to get out of that. And if people have opinions, they should stand by them. But also, I don't want people to let the worry of my feelings hold them back from this show getting better. So I'm kicking that around. Maybe we'll figure it out, but I hope you guys are enjoying them. I'm really enjoying recording them. So yeah, please just let me know what pieces you like, what pieces you don't like. All those fun things I always mention every week, following all the social medias, doing all that stuff. If you know anybody that you think would be a good guest, send them my way. Other than that, just keep on the lookout for all the big things that are coming on the horizon here. Please, find the ones that you want to support. If you're not a big streaming video games guy, maybe that's not for you, but maybe you are. Maybe the podcast hasn't been, maybe you're not even that big into podcasts and you just check these out from time to time just to support me. Maybe video game streaming is kind of where you're at. Maybe you're more of a business guy and more of the business consulting side that I want to start up. Maybe that's more where your interests lie, but I'm hoping to bring a really wide ranging series of content coming forward so that I can find people of all different walks of life and find something that I can bring to them and bring value to them in some way. And I just got to keep diversifying and finding ways to do that. And I'm really excited to do that. So I can only do that with your guys' help. So once again, like I mentioned in the intro, thank you guys so much for listening. It's been amazing. The support I've gotten is exactly what I need to keep going forward. Like I've mentioned a few times, I'm so excited about this, but I'm also terrified and so scared, but that's what helps get you past that scariness, is that there's people believing in you that have your back, and that's what's really relit this fire and got me so excited to bring the best content forward and to really prove to you guys exactly what I've been promising over this last year and a half or whatever it's been since I started this podcast, of just what I believe in and what I think this medium can do, and just how powerful I think it can be. I want to really, I've said a lot, but I want to put my money where my mouth is, and I want to show you guys that, and I want to show a blueprint, and I want to highlight people that are, maybe not doing the same thing, but in that spirit of chasing their own thing. I want to be able to build a platform that has some reach that can help those people too. And I'm really excited about it, and I hope you guys are getting excited about it too. And there's gonna be lots of fun stuff coming in the future. So keep it on the channel, keep it downloaded. Please subscribe. I try to release the videos in the early mornings so that your phone's still on Wi-Fi. You can just download the episode and have it ready for you for whenever you need. Then if you get caught at work or you have to go sit at the doctor's office or the dentist's office and you have half an hour in the waiting room, you throw it on, and you already got it downloaded, the latest episode. So that's really helpful if you could do that. And other than that, just have a great week. Stay positive. Enjoy the sunshine. Get that vitamin D while you can. The winter's coming, I know, but you know what? Just keep the positivity in any way you can find. Show compassion. Show some love. Tell people you love them. That's always my message. So keep on that, and I'll see you guys on the next one. All right. Bye.